Good afternoon, everybody. And I'd like to declare this meeting open at 4:04. Almighty God, we seek your blessing and guidance in our deliberations on behalf of the people of Colac Otway Shire. Enable this council's decisions to be those that contribute to the true welfare and benefit of our community. I would like to start this afternoon by acknowledging the traditional custodians and lawmakers of this land, their elders past, present, and welcome any descendants today. Please be advised that this meeting is recorded and live streamed with the exception of confidential matters. This includes the public participation sections of the meetings. The live stream recording of this afternoon's meeting will be available on the website as soon as practicable. By participating in open meetings, individuals consent to the use and disclosure of the information they share at the meeting, including any personal and/or sensitive information. Apologies and leave of absence. I'd just like to note that Councillor Arnott is an apology. Moving on to question time. Colac Otway Shire Council encourages community input, and integral to this is the opportunity provided to ask questions at council meetings. A maximum of 30 minutes is allowed for question time at council meetings. Community members wishing to ask questions of council by video conference were requested to register their intention before 5 p.m. on Monday, 20th of November 2023. No requests were received. I have received 5 questions in writing from James Judd, Jason Schramm, Jane Gross and Bridget Finlayson. These questions will be read out and a response will be provided by the relevant member of the exec team. In accordance with sub-rule 56.6.3 of Council's governance rules, an individual written response will only be provided to questions that have not been read out today. All written responses will be available in the minutes on the Colac Otway Shire website once confirmed at the following council meeting. Before we move on, can I ask for a show of hands of those in the gallery who might want to ask a question today? Thank you. Questions in writing. Question 1 from James Judd. Has the Colac Otway Shire Council ever considered the need to evacuate this entire shire in a hurry so people could be taken to a safe place, or is it working with other authorities to make sure a plan is in existence and could promptly be acted on? Do not forget, no sites of volcanoes in the region have yet been declared dead, but only dormant, that is sleeping and could burst back into activity at any time. If a volcano bursts back to life, it can expel a material a long way from the site of the activity. Also, the sites chosen for production of renewable electricity are in or near known volcanic activity areas. Do not forget Krakatoa lay dormant for many years, but when it exploded in 1883, the world knew about it. Very soon, by both or one noise and loss of light due to clouds of dust and smoke that went around the world, plus other dormant volcanoes have reacted since with large loss of life. Response from the Acting Manager of Infrastructure and Operations.
Through you, Mayor. Victoria Police is the responsible emergency service for the coordination of evacuation during any type of emergency, and Council remains committed to working with our emergency service organisations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr McNeil. Question 2 from Mr Judd. Did the Colac Otway Shire Council consider the impact on its revenue before it proposed to introduce the cat confinement law? Also, the additional penalty this could put on renters who had a cat when seeking rental property, as the landlord would be required to provide a cat confinement area at extra expense. So either rents would go up or a massive increase in bond required before rental period started, if not both. Is the Colac Otway Shire Council going to again review the cat containment law should council find out that this results in increased rental stress for cat owners or reduction in council's revenue as people cease to own and register cats with council? Response from the Acting General Manager, Infrastructure and Operations.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. The decision to introduce a cat confinement order was made based on the positive benefits that it would have on the environment and the public amenity. A review on the effect of the order can be undertaken in future if council is of the opinion that one is warranted. Council did not specifically consider the impact of the order on its fee revenue, but it's expected that any impact would not be significant.
Thank you. Question 3 from Mr Judd. Is the Colac Otway Shire Council ever going to cease entering into contracts or issuing permits that contain conditions that may never be able to be provided? To say that renewable electricity is to be used by a specific time when that is not possible now, and the authority to provide the needed infrastructure has refused to give any guarantee that transmission systems to take renewable electricity from sites to places it can be used will ever be provided. So this council could face having some issued contracts and permits being declared null and void. Response from General Manager, Community and Economy.
Through you, Mayor, it is assumed that this question relates to a key term in the Lake Colac Holiday Park lease, which requires the lessee to use 100% renewable energy at the premises from the commencement of the 4th year of the initial term of the lease. This is a realistic and achievable condition which has been accepted by the new lessee.
Thank you, Mr Sheeran. Question 4 from Mr Judd. Will any soundproofing be put in between the ceiling and the roof of the toilet facilities to be erected at Memorial Square in Colac?
Through you, Mayor, the new Memorial Square toilets will be constructed in accordance with relevant planning and building regulations. This will not include any further soundproofing between the ceiling and roof, in addition to standard building practices for public amenities.
Thank you. Question 5 from Mr Judd. When the Colac Otway Shire Council set the maximum weekly charge the operators of the Lake Colac Holiday Park could charge, why was this not qualified so term residents on social security benefits could not be charged more than the pension levy relief paid to those able to receive this plus a margin, since the payment is only per fortnight and is less than the maximum weekly charge council allows to be charged? In some other municipalities, rates for social security benefit receivers are set at the maximum pension rental payment plus a set percentage of pension benefits for caravan park term tenants. General Manager, Community and Economy.
Through you, Mayor, the weekly rental amount set by council for permanent tenants at the Lake Colac Holiday Park was determined through consideration of previous and current charges and what is considered to be a fair and reasonable rental amount for the facilities and services available. The rental amount does not need to be linked to social security benefits, as tenants may not be receiving such benefits.
Thank you. Number 6 from Mr Judd. Is the Colac Otway Shire Council so hungry for money that it exempts the ambulance from being charged a fee when it uses council-controlled property to raise funds, but it refused to also exempt hospitals and medical service providers from being charged a fee when they raise funds in the Shire? As we have a number of separate providers of medical services in at least 3 separate settlements in this Shire, re-events policy review, council meeting 22nd of November 2023. Response from General Manager, Community and Economy.
Through you, Mayor, the draft events in a public place permit policy will be considered for adoption by council at today's meeting. The draft policy includes clarity on potential fee waivers for events, which includes an emergency service-led event. Depending on the type of event and the provider, a medical service may be considered an emergency service and fall under this category.
Thank you. Questions from Jason Schramm. As the Colac Botanic Gardens are unique in that people can drive around to observe the beauty within, giving access to be able to enjoy the gardens to those unable to walk or with limited mobility. Why have the Botanic Gardens been closed to car visitors, the whole road, on weekends and periods throughout the week for well over a year now? Response from General Manager, Infrastructure and Programs.
Through you, Mayor, as part of the implementation of the grey-headed flying fox management plan, Council consults with an independent ecological specialist to provide regular advice on routine management of the Botanic Gardens, which has included the closure of the Botanic Gardens to vehicular traffic at specific times to minimise the disturbance of the grey-headed flying fox colony. Council undertakes extensive community notification relating to activities associated with the ongoing management of the grey-headed flying fox colony.
If it is because of the bats, who is council taking advice from and who is making these decisions within the Shire to close access to the gardens?
Through you, Mayor. Council consults with an independent ecological specialist to provide regular advice on routine management of the Botanic Gardens to enable officers to implement actions that will support the grey-headed flying fox management plan.
And a third part to the question, why are the lawns and other works at the gardens being mown at night, and what has the cost to ratepayer been in overtime paid for these nighttime works?
Through you, Mayor. Routine activities are regularly reviewed and undertaken to minimise disturbance, including the mowing of the lawn within the immediate vicinity of the preferred roosting area of the grey-headed flying fox. The alternative timing for mowing of the small area of the Botanic Gardens complements the range of activities that occur during the year and represents a minimal cost to Council.
Thank you. Question 4 from Mr Schramm. As the Forest Caravan Park is looking very tired, is Council satisfied that the lease agreement is working well at Forest Caravan Park, and have all current terms been fulfilled from both Council and the leaseholders in terms of upgrades to the park and within timelines? General Manager, Community and Economy.
Through you, Mayor. The lease agreement is delivering on the expectations for improvements to the Forest Holiday Park, albeit slightly slower than expected, as Belgravia Pro works through changes with annual site holders. The tenant is progressing implementation of the master plan for the site, which will take a number of years. The completion of agreed capital improvement works will see the holiday park vastly improved by the lessee. As per the lease agreement, there is a requirement for Council to improve the park's wastewater system. There's been a need to review the scope of the project and the design of the proposed wastewater system following Bowen Water's commitment to a centralised wastewater management solution in Forest.
Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt, Mayor, and I'm not sure how points of order work in relation to answers to questions, but I'd just like to draw back to, apologies, to question number 2 from Mr Schramm, which asked if it is because of the bats, who is Council taking advice from and who is making decisions within the Shire to close access to the gardens? That question hasn't been answered as far as I'm concerned. And I was just wondering if we could seek to have an answer provided. Part of that question, I should say, hasn't been answered. I was just wondering if we could seek to, if I could seek direction on whether or not we can provide a further answer in relation to who in the Shire organisation makes that decision at the end of the day.
Mr McNeill.
Through you, Mayor. Council staff take decisions on the management of the Botanic Gardens, taking into account specialist advice, as indicated in the response, where there is an ecologist which is providing advice to Council on the management of the bats in accordance with the plan.
Thank you, Mr McNeill, and I respect that, but it asks who is making the decisions within the Shire, and that hasn't been answered, and that is something, question that is asked directly in the question. I think we are going to carry through with what appears to me to be a charade of taking questions from the community and not answering them. Why are we having questions from the community? I'm sorry, I'm really sick of sitting here and seeing this quite a fair bit.
CEO.
So, through the Chair, Councillor Finnegan, we genuinely try to provide informative and relevant answers to the questions, and on this instance you're seeking to have an officer named. I assume we'll take that one on notice, because I'm not going to be able to provide a name, sit here and provide a name.
Well, perhaps not even a specific officer, but a position title, something of that ilk, so at least we know, because as far as I'm concerned, we see this far too much in our responses to the community on their questions, and I think we need to really answer their questions. I'm sorry.
Councillor Potter.
So the Manager of Service and Operations has responsibility for the operations of the Botanic Gardens, and depending on the matter, often that might include information and discussion with the Executive Management Team and councillors at briefings, depending on the issue. So that's the department where it sits. The Manager of Service and Operations has oversight.
Finnegan, I think we'll take this offline and have a discussion about your concern around answers. So I'd like to, Councillor Potter, did you want to make a comment?
I did, thank you, Mayor. I'm just, understand what Councillor Finnegan's saying, but I'm just concerned that with the potential of naming staff in certain circumstances may hold them up to
No, it's
Well,
not something...
various things. I think we have to be very,
Very careful.
with doing that. Yeah.
And I should say I do respect Councillor Potter's position, but I think generally some kind of position or something without naming a specific officer might be a middle ground around that, because it seems to have just been completely glossed over in the question.
Thank you. I'll move on to questions from Jane Gross. At the April 26, 2023 meeting, Council, the following resolution was carried unanimously to advise the community of its proposed actions and expected timeframes too. What actions have been taken to achieve these commitments over the past 7 months, and when are they likely to be completed?
Through you, Mayor. Officers have met with representatives of GORCAPA and EMAC to gain and understand what approvals and permits would be required to facilitate the reinstatement of the Marengo beacon, and understand for this project to progress, approvals will need to be sought from the land manager, landowner and traditional owners, including Marine and Coastal Act consent, landowner consent and a cultural heritage management plan. This is a complex matter to coordinate planning and associated approvals, and does not currently have a budget allocation to prepare the necessary documentation to support applications for approval. To progress the reinstatement of the Marengo beacon, a budget will need to be allocated to facilitate the approval, design and installation, will need to be considered for future funding amongst other project priorities in future budget processes. It's intended that officers would be briefing Council on this matter in the short term.
Thank you, Mr McNeill. And to that question, update the Colac Otway Heritage Plan to include significant heritage features and heritage buildings not currently included in the plan.
Again, through you, Mayor. An update to Council's heritage study to consider the addition of places not previously identified requires a budget allocation from Council. This project will be considered by Council for funding amongst other project priorities in future budget processes.
Thank you. I have a question from Bridget Finlayson. Sports lighting upgrade at the Lake Oval, Colac Cricket Ground. I am a resident of Grant Street, Colac, and share a boundary with the cricket ground. I have contacted Council to find out specific facts about the proposed lighting upgrade at the Lake Oval. It would appear that no plans were available for viewing to determine the implications of new lighting on the amenity of my property. 1, where will the location of the proposed 28-metre lighting pylons be placed? 2, what will the angles of the light spill from each lights? 3, if these figures are unavailable, what is the make and type of light fitting proposed to be used? 4, has the Council conducted an environmental impact study on the effect of light towers on the migration flight paths of Indigenous bats, birds and the behaviour of insects? Response from General Manager, Community and Economy.
Through you, Mayor. Council has undertaken preliminary investigations for sports lighting at the Lake Colac Oval to inform a funding application to Sport and Recreation Victoria, should Council decide that this is a priority project at its meeting today. Council hasn't undertaken detailed design or further community engagement at this point in time, as we're waiting on direction from Council. If Council resolves that this project is a priority for a funding application, further information will be made available during the planning and design of the project. It is important to note that modern sports lighting design has improved significantly, with a key purpose to reduce any potential impacts of light spill to adjoining residents.
Thank you, Mr Sheeran. Now we'll move on to questions from the gallery. Before we proceed with questions from the gallery, can I remind everyone that question time is for questions only. It's not a forum for public debate or statements. When asking a question, can you please state your full name for the minutes? Who would like to ask a question? Thank you, Lynn.
Lynn Russell. My question is, would the CEO and Mr Surin please convey to Madison Hardy, the Colac Otway Shire's Events Officer, our sincere thanks in incorporating all our concerns in the new policies, which render the policies easier to understand, more consumer friendly and defines and refines the communications that we as events organisers requested. Thank you.
Thank you. Does that require a response from anybody?
Through you,
Thank
Mayor,
you.
I'd love to provide a response if that's okay.
Mr Sheeran?
Thank you, Ms Russell. That would be a pleasure to pass that feedback on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, good afternoon. Thank you for taking my question without notice. I'm Diana Stubbs. I'm the recently appointed Secretary of the Friends of the Beachy Rail Trail, and this refers to the agenda item 9.8. So we've just had a sign-off of the MOU last year between the Council and the Colac Otway Shire Council. And the MOU states that there would be an appointed person that we would regularly be able to make contact with in regard to issues about the trail. We've made repeated requests to the Council for the current contact, and as yet we haven't had any advice as to who that is. And I would really like someone to make contact with me before I leave today to say who that person is. As a result, we haven't had any notification of today's agenda item, and that would have been really helpful for us as a group to have been able to work through some of those points. This refers to the handing over of the land transfer of the Ditchley section of the rail trail. We're pleased to see that this item is now on the agenda, seeing it was proposed and all the paperwork done in 2012. But in 2018, we asked for a risk assessment of this particular section of the railway, highlighting that it actually isn't fit for purpose and that some of the gradients are 45 degrees. Currently, it has had regular closures due to a whole range of things, but mostly it's been dangerous to navigate. And if you want to be able to keep yourself stable, you actually need to hold on to the barbed wire fence. So that actually isn't that practical. We understand that you're talking about doing minor works, but at this point in time, we'd really like to see a survey of a much more appropriate means of traversing that particular section of the rail trail. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your question. Who would like to respond? Mr Sheeran?
Through you, Mayor. Yeah, thank you for your comments and your question. We'll make sure that we catch up with you before you leave tonight to talk about the appropriate contact. Yeah.
Thank you.
Doug Evans from the Colac District Umpires Association. First, I'd like to thank the council for putting the application in for the lighting funding. It's severely needed at this ground because at the moment we've only covered about half the ground and the lighting is very poor to start off with. And during the heart of winter, half
Sorry,
the ground...
have we got a question?
Yes, I do at the
Okay,
end.
thank you.
This is leading into it.
Okay.
So during winter, the ground floods and we can't use almost half of that, and some of that takes up the lighting area as well. So we're reduced even more. So the umpires is, well, it's not the heart of football, but if you don't have umpires for football, there is no football. And we need better facilities to support the umpires to grow. And also low lighting, ball gets high, it's dangerous. So my question is, if the council does not support the lighting, what are you going to do to support the Colac Umpires Association, as such as we put an application in to move to the central, Colac Central, where it has all the facilities, lights, grounds, everything. So we're just wondering, the question is, if you're not going to support the lighting, what are you going to support for us? Thank you.
Mr Sheeran?
Through you, Mayor. Yeah, thanks very much for the question. Obviously, it's an item on the agenda today for council to consider. Subject to that decision, we'll be in contact with your association, Doug, to talk about the next steps, whether that is to support the application or if not, what some other potential opportunities might be. So we'll be in contact after the meeting.
Thank you. Any further questions from the gallery? Mr Billing.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Alan Billing, Colac. My questions relate to the what's happening within the Tourist Information Centre review. Following the release of the online survey, I attended a council reception and spoke to James Myers and requested a hard copy of the survey. I was provided with the documents, both the business sector and the community section, which I forwarded on to others at their request. On the 9th of November, I attempted to complete the online document, only to find that the community section could not be accessed. I again contacted reception and was told there was no community section, that the community were completing the business survey. I understand this to be incorrect. On the 10th of November, after a second attempt at the survey, I returned to reception and requested another hard copy, which the receptionist cheerfully provided. However, the document I received was incomplete, stapled together out of order, and every second page missing. Given the issues I've had, and if one looks at what's in the media, others have also had issues. Comments in the media. Could council inform the community what the weighting will be attached to the survey results in the final review?
Thank you, Mr Billing. Mr Sheeran?
Through you, Mayor, can I just clarify your question, Mr Billing? So the weighting in regards to business versus community responses?
No, the total survey in terms of what is the weighting? What is that final survey worth in reviewing the whole service review?
Yeah, sure. Through you, Mayor, that we haven't got a number in terms of the weighting. It is one component of the broader review. What it does is try and get an understanding of, particularly around business sentiment for a VIC, because at the end of the day, a visitor information centre is primarily there to drive business in your town and in your region. So, but we also thought it was important to get feedback from the community as well. So it's one component of a broader review that will feed into recommendations to council in the near future.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
It's a second question in relation to it. Last Friday, I understand council staff ran a sausage sizzle and open community day at the Donaldson Street play space. My question is, seems like a good way of getting community input. Would council consider something similar operating out of the current visitor information centre with multiple days available for people to actually go there, talk on what is there and what they would like to see there? This current system of online, some people can handle it very well. I clearly can't. But there's not been an opportunity where people could have the choices of times to go to a drop-in and provide some valuable information. Thank you.
Thank you. Would someone like to comment on that or provide?
Through you, Mayor, look, it wasn't something that we had planned for as part of our community engagement for the VIC review or the visitor servicing review. There will be further opportunities and we can take that into account and consider that suggestion.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My name's Dave Coventry. I'm the Secretary of the Colac Otway Rovers Soccer Club. I refer you to agenda item 9.4. Similar to Mr Evans with the umpires, I'm here today to urge you guys to support the resolution for the local sports infrastructure fund. Seriously consider progressing the football feasibility study and also the Lake Oval lighting fund to upgrade. And given that I represent the interests of around 200 to 250 6 to 10-year-old kids who love playing football and don't have a home and currently play their home games on whatever space we can manage to organise in whatever given time, I'd ask the council, similar to Mr Evans, should the support for the local sports infrastructure fund not be made, can the council make any commitments to the soccer club as to what you might be able to do for us going forward?
Thank you. Mr Sheeran?
Through you, Mayor. Thanks for the question, Mr Coventry. Yeah, obviously it's an item on the agenda tonight, so we'll see what plays out there. But I'm sure we'll have ongoing conversations about the future of football or soccer in Colac Otway. We understand the club is growing, the junior participation is growing, which is really important. It's great that you've been able to use Trinity College this season, but is that a long-term option or not? There's some of the things that we do need to tease out, hopefully through a feasibility study as proposed in the agenda.
Thank you. Any further questions from the gallery? That concludes question time. Thank you very much. Petitions and joint letters. We have no petitions or joint letters for today's meeting. And I would like now to move on to declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest, please? Councillor Finnegan.
Thank you, Mayor. In relation to item 9.5, 765 and 792 Nalligan Road, Currunnan use and development of a dwelling, I have a general conflict of interest as one of the objectors in the matter is the mother of 4 of my sisters, so I'll have to sit that one out.
Thank you, Councillor Finnegan. Mr Sheeran.
Through you, Mayor, I'd like to declare a conflict of interest for item 9.4, 2023-24 Local Sports Infrastructure Fund. I'm a member of the Colac Cricket Club, which is a tenant club of the Lake Oval, which is subject to consideration tonight.
Thank you. Confirmation of minutes. I propose that we move to confirm the minutes of the council meeting held on Wednesday, 22nd of October 2023 and the council meeting held on the 8th of November 2023. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Finnegan. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Hanson. Is that to be opposed? Thank you. All those in favour? Carried.
Councillor
5.
Costin.
Thank you. 5, 6, 6, 0. Now we move on to the officers' report, and before we do move on, I'd just like to note that item 9.8, Old Beachy Rail Trail Road Deviation and Land Exchange, the CEO has advised that that will be withdrawn from tonight's agenda to be rescheduled at another time. Thank you. So we'll move on to item 9.1, Events Policy Review. It's great to start that today with an important piece of policy work that's taken shape over a long time. And we all know how much events play a really important role in our community and contributes to the economy and social life in our communities. And this policy work has really benefited from a lot of feedback in the community. So I'd like to thank the community for that. So the purpose of this item is to present the events in public place policy for adoption. Do councillors have any questions of officers? Councillor Costin.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to propose an alternate motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Oh, we've got to have questions of officers first, sorry. Any questions of officers? No questions? Councillor Finnegan?
Guess I might as well tease this one out. With the events policy and something that has been discussed is I guess something that's been discussed is which organisations qualify as not-for-profit and qualify for fee exemptions and the like. And I'm just wondering if you could go into, say, whether, which organisations exactly qualify for those fee exemptions.
Through you, Mayor, the report outlines recommended options for waivers, and those organisations are listed and include. In fact, it's actually based not on organisations so much as it is based on event type. And they have been outlined in the report for consideration, and they include commemorative events of national significance, emergency service-led events, so they may be led by CFA, SES, ambulance, police and the like, and educational activities conducted by educational providers.
Another question, Councillor Finnegan.
Thank you, Mayor. So that doesn't include not-for-profits and other bodies that do significant work in the community. They will have to pay a fee to the Shire, is that correct?
As per this recommendation, that's correct.
Thank you. Councillor Costin.
Thank you. Following on from that question, how much do we expect to raise in fee revenue from charitable or not-for-profit organisations running events?
Through you, Mayor, I haven't got the specific figure on that, but what I can say is we conduct in the order of about 40 event permits. We complete about 40 event permits annually, and a substantial portion of our events are conducted by community organisations, not-for-profit, charitable, and even education providers.
Mr. Costin.
So we don't have a dollar number, a rough estimate of a dollar number?
I don't have the exact figure, no. However, a substantial portion, if you calculated 40 events, and our fee is in the order of $200, it'd be in the order of $8,000. What proportion of them are made up specifically by those organisations, I don't have that information at hand.
And a follow-on, if I may.
One further question.
Thank you. Given we acknowledge that our events play an important role in strengthening the community and provide significant economic, social and cultural benefits, why do we actually charge a fee of our charitable and not-for-profit organisations to run events? Aren't the events something we want? So why are we charging a fee? What's the benefit of charging a fee?
Councillor Costin, I don't think that's the officer's decision about charging fees. I think that's part of the councillor's role in the fees and charges.
I think, Mayor, with all due respect, that officers have proposed a policy which proposes to charge charitable and not-for-profit organisations, and I'm wondering why that proposal has been made. What do we want to achieve by charging a fee? Is it revenue or is it something else?
The proposal put forth to councillors at the moment and within the policy ultimately just sets out potential waivers that could be offered. It's not necessarily saying not to charge a fee for event permits.
I'm not sure you understand the question. The question is, in the past we have provided waivers, as I understand, we've provided waivers for charitable and not-for-profit organisations running events. Why in this case are we only proposing to say that waivers may be possible for commemorative events, emergency events or educational events, but not for general events that contribute to our community through economic, social, cultural benefits?
CEO, I think you'd like to make a comment.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So, Councillor Costins, I'll see if I can assist to provide the context. So, our current policy is silent on fees and silent on waivers, and so whatever practice may have been in the past, it's potentially been quite ad hoc, without necessarily a policy basis. So, through this review process, there's a recommendation to formalise some of the types of events that might benefit from a fee waiver, and that will be up to councillors to decide tonight whether that seems to be on track or whether councillors think that there are further free waivers. The proposed policy presented doesn't introduce anything more than what has been there in the past. It's just trying to provide clarity, and we look forward to your deliberation on that.
Councillor Potter.
Thanks, Mayor. Just in relation to the charging of a fee, do we do that to try and, because officers put a lot of time into helping organisers with events and all the rest of it and attending events, do we charge a fee to try and recoup some of that money, or do we charge a fee, for example, to go towards maintenance on the events trailer and all that other infrastructure that we provide? Historically, do you know if there's a reason why we're charging a fee?
Through you, Mayor, I'm not privy to sort of past decisions made in relation to this. I am aware we do have individual charges for events trailer and permits, but beyond that, I'm afraid I don't know the history on that.
Thank you. Any further questions? So, councillors' officers have provided a recommendation with the report for our consideration. Does any councillor wish to move a motion in relation to this matter?
Mayor, I'd propose an alternative motion, which includes the additional point 4. No, that's not the point. I was proposing to include an additional point to permit fee exemptions for events that align with our council plan objectives and are run by charitable and non-for-profit organisations. Sorry, I was looking at point 4. Sorry. Must be colourblind, I can't read blue. Thank you. So that's it, thank you.
That's the motion you want to move?
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Costin. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Hart. Anyone opposing? No? The Costin?
Thank you, Mayor. First, I'd like to say thank you to the officers for preparing this events policy. It's a big step forward and it's a great piece of work, and it's been recognised by former Councillor Lynn Russell. Thank you, Lynn, for your comments. There is a small issue in relation to the charging of fees, and another of our questioners raised this event, Mr Judd, asking why we are proposing waivers may be provided for an ambulance service but not for the hospital and other medical services. So I'm attempting to address that concern. In the proposed updated policy, we acknowledge that events play an important role in strengthening the community while providing significant economic, social and cultural benefits. We seek to assist event organisers in ensuring that events held on council land enhance the resident, participant and visitor experience while being conducted in a safe manner. But then we propose to apply fees that might well deter our time-poor volunteers and our cash-strapped organisations, our not-for-profit organisations, from running the very events that we want them to run to help us achieve our council plan vision of making our region a great place to learn, live, work and play. This seems counterintuitive to charge fees for what are effectively our community partners in helping us achieve what we want to achieve in our council plan. If these organisations didn't run their events, we'd most likely have to find other ways, perhaps even do it ourselves, to achieve our council plan vision. And I know it's been proposed that organisations can apply for grants, which could be used to cover the fees, but that just seems a bit archaic and nonsensical, inefficient, in fact, to me, and only adds a further burden, not just to the volunteers who are proposing these events, but also it's a time burden on our staff. Thank you.
Councillor Hart?
Yeah, I'll reserve, Mayor.
Thank you. Any Councillor Finnegan? Sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to speak in support of Councillor Costin's proposed motion here. I think that, as Councillor Costin said, the council staff have done fantastic work in really building this policy up from scratch, particularly Maddie Hardy, our events officer, and as well as building that up, when they went out with the drafts and in consultations, they've heard back from the community and they've taken on feedback and significant recommendations from those in community who run events and have taken those on board, which is really, really great to see. However, I wasn't able to bring myself to vote for the officer recommendation, particularly around the issues Councillor Costin has raised around charging fees to charitable non-for-profit organisations, especially when those events align with the objectives of the council plan. The reality is, especially in relation to charitable and not-for-profit events, we hold a lot of these. A lot of those are held in this shire. And for me, I think it's really unethical on the council's part to be charging those organisations to host these events that really bring people into our shire and the like. So that's why I'm against it. And my opinion is really the rate base should be covering this cost. I don't think we should be seeking to impose extra fees for absolutely everything to try and get our jobs done, But I will vote for this motion because I think it's the right thing to do. And well done to everyone involved in getting this policy together.
Councillor Potter.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd just like to thank the efforts of staff, Fiona, Maddie and Kat in pulling all this together, and thank the community members who attended workshops and contributed surveys and so forth, and particularly pleasing to hear comments from Lynn Russell at the start of the meeting. We're often criticised but not often praised, so thanks for that. I would like to draw attention to page 9 of the officer's report, where a paragraph headed opportunities for event-related information outside of the policy, and indicate that officers intend to do further work around visual representation of information, process chart, which has been called for by some members of the community, checklists and summaries, and even looking at some software. So commend officers for seeing that in the report, and I know they'll get to that work as soon as they can. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Hart.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to thank Mrs Russell for her comments at the start of the meeting on this matter and acknowledge the efforts of council officers. I will be supporting Councillor Costin's alternative because I do think that it was a bit harsh in relation to the fees, and that has been addressed if Councillor Costin's resolution is adopted. And I also note from the comment on the fee revenue that's raised, approximately $8,000 total fees, and only a proportion of that would be affected by this change. So we're talking, in the context of council's budget, not a significant amount of money, yet significant and important to the people who are putting in so much time to conduct these events. So that's why I'll be supporting this resolution.
Thank you, Councillor Hart. Councillors, I'll now call for a vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. 6 love. 6 love. It sounds like a... Move on to item 9.2, draft fair access policy. The purpose of this item is to consider the draft Colac Otway Shire fair access policy and endorse the draft for public exhibition. Do councillors have any questions of officers? Councillor Finnegan.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And considering I think the draft for access policy to my eyes looks good, but I guess there are some questions out there in the community as to how such policy may affect. And for example, I note the presence of the Secretary of the Otway Rovers here today, and sort of bring forth the question that if there was, a senior women's team who determined that the best time for them to, the best ground for them to utilise was Central Reserve, and the best time for them to play was on a Saturday during the football, how would the draft policy deal with such a conflict and perhaps mediating?
Sure, thank you, Councillor. Through you, Mayor. So the premise of the policy that the state government requires us to put in place is that we have a policy that allows for females to access the highest quality facilities at the best and most popular times. I think the really important thing to note is that the best and most popular times don't always mean that it might be at 3 o'clock on a Saturday. So the female teams under this policy would be able to communicate that to not just council as an owner and manager of a rec facility, but also to their leagues, their team and committee. So under this policy that we are required to adopt under legislation, if a team did come and ask that question, we would be duty bound to bring the parties together to try to facilitate a conversation that will hopefully find an outcome that worked for all parties.
Follow-up question, Councillor Finnegan.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And also noting the presence of the the Football Umpires Association in the room. Say that, there were, say that there are women umpires, again with the association, and as a group, the association determines that they would like that the best facility for them to train at is at Central Reserve, and understanding that the council believes that facility is overutilised at the moment, how would the council seek to mediate such a position if the Umpires Association determined that under this policy, particularly with having women umpires and the like, that the best time for them, best place for them to train, the best facilities for them to access were at Central Reserve?
Through you, Mayor, I think the same principles apply. It would be about all parties coming together in the spirit of goodwill to work out how a solution might best be found for all parties with gender equitable use in mind. We would just note that this policy governs buildings and reserves that we own and manage. So there are elements at the Central Reserve buildings that we don't own and manage, the social rooms being an example. So again, it's just about having those conversations to see if we can find a happy medium for all of those involved.
Thank you. Councillor Costin.
Thank you, Mayor. The draft policy specifically only covers council-owned and directly managed sports facilities. So I'm just curious, how is it planned to achieve the same level of fairness and equitable access for facilities that we don't own or directly manage, such as the facilities down at Apollo Bay? How will we achieve our policy objectives in those areas?
Through you, Mayor. So that's correct. The policy identifies that that it only applies to facilities that we own and manage. So council can't facilitate an outcome at a facility that we don't own and manage. That would be facilitating an outcome would be required of the facility owner and manager. In the case of Apollo Bay, that would be GORCAPA. So the Office for Women is working with GORCAPA and with DECA as owners and managers of recreation facilities not just within our shire, but in Victoria, to determine their approach. They are also in the same boat as us. They will need to facilitate those outcomes. Having said that, GORCAP has been a really good partner in this process. They attended our information session at Apollo Bay last week. They've attended meetings with us and have given every indication that they intend to be able to deliver something that's fairly consistent with the approach that council's taking for the facilities we own and manage.
Councillor Finnegan.
Thank you. And I'm glad you've mentioned that obviously other organisations have to essentially come up with their own fair access policies to comply with the state government policy essentially. And you've specifically mentioned Gorkappa and Deaker there. How are they going in relation to sort of their process of implementing such policies? Are you aware if they've moved along, or, for example, have Deaker not really gone that far down the line?
Through you, Mayor. Well, as I said, Gorkappa has been a really good partner to us throughout this process. Where they're at with it, I'm not exactly sure, but I know that they have gotten their head around the state government's fair access policy roadmap and will be making appropriate arrangements. Deaker, I understand, is still talking to the Office for Women. We haven't been privy to those conversations, so in all honesty, I couldn't tell you what Deaker's approach is going to be. We're still waiting on receiving some written advice, and by we, I think probably the more operative word would be the tenants and the committees of management at Deaker Reserves are still waiting on communication to come from Deaker, is my understanding.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions on the fair access policy? No further questions. So the officers have provided a recommendation with the report for our consideration. Does any councillor wish to move a motion in relation to the matter? Councillor Costin?
Thank you, Mayor.
And as seconder? Thanks, Councillor Hanson.
I'd like to move
Anyone
the
opposed?
officer recommendation.
Just cool you. Anyone opposed? No. Councillor Costin. Very eager.
Thank you. Last week, after Wednesday's briefing in Colac, I travelled back to Apollo Bay and had the great pleasure of attending the Fair Access Club information session in Apollo Bay. It was an excellent event. It was well run by Leisure Networks and our own staff, well represented by our own staff. Thank you very much. It was a great event, well attended. And it's great to hear the local clubs, of the local clubs' achievements to date and their commitments to gender equity and a fair and inclusive future. I am a little concerned that we don't leave behind those sporting clubs that may have their facilities located on land that we don't own or manage, and we can think more about that as we proceed, but I think that's in the application rather than what we're proposing at the moment. So the draft policy is to respond to the federal government's fair access and policy roadmap, but although it's responding to that, it's not pushing this along. It perhaps more importantly reflects Council's own commitment to address inequality and known barriers experienced by women and girls in accessing and using community sports infrastructure. The draft aims to take a positive approach and progressively build capacity and the capabilities within Council to identify and eliminate systematic causes of gender inequality in the policy areas, programs, communication, the delivery of our sports infrastructure and services. Built into the policy is a commitment that Council will undertake the necessary and steps towards implementation of the government's policy. The expected outcome from this is a safe and equal society where all genders have equal access to resources and opportunities and will be treated with dignity, respect and fairness. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hanson?
Yeah, I will speak briefly because I think Councillor Costin has covered everything. I certainly encourage people to read the draft policy and to make submissions. And I'll also note, going along with, on top of everything Councillor Costin has said, that also that we have an obligation also to adopt a fair access policy. We certainly want to show that we are committed to equality with access to our facilities, and it could also it'll probably also make it easier for us to apply for future sport and rec funding through the Victorian government bodies. So it actually is very important that we do this piece of work. not only for our community but also for accessing better facilities in the future, of which we will need government funding and government support.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson. Any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Finnegan.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And I'm also, like Councillor Costin, similar to Councillor Costin, I was the councillor who attended the roadmap session hosted by Leisure Networks and our own staff at Central Reserve last Monday, and I was really encouraged by the turnout and the diversity of the clubs that attended and organisations that attended were really there, seeking to hear more information about what was being proposed and how they could make things work and get the best possible outcomes of this. And that's just absolutely fantastic. This policy is going to lead to fantastic outcomes, not just for women's sport, but sport in general, I think. And it's just really encouraging to see everyone coming out and going, okay, let's make this work and make this work well, which has been something I've seen. Like Councillor Costin, I really do hope, that some of the clubs in our shire aren't left behind because land managers like DECA and the like, who are a state government department, should they fail to comply with what is the State Government Act, I don't really want to see those clubs within our shire left holding the bag, essentially. But I would hope that DECA come to the table and sort out their affairs in relation to this Act. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Finnegan. Anybody else wish to speak? Councillors, I'll now call for a vote. All those in favour? Against? Nil. Carried 6-0. Thank you. Move on to our Community Awards event review. Item 9.3. Our communities are really blessed with people who go above and beyond in our community and reach out and help other people in our environment and in our community, and Council likes to recognise these people each year through our Community Awards program. It's one of the really positive parts of the year, and we had a great event here last year. So the purpose of this item is to consider the location and format of future Colac Otway Community Awards events. Do councillors have any questions of officers? No questions. Councillors, the officers have provided a recommendation with the report for our consideration. Does a councillor wish to move a motion in relation to this matter? Councillor Potter? Do I have a seconder? What's the motion?
I'll move the officer's recommendation, Mayor.
You'll move the officer's recommendation as read. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hanson. Is that to be opposed? No. Councillor Potter?
Thanks, Mayor. I won't speak too long, bless you. Look, the Otway Shire Community Awards are a very, very important event, and for some years have been held on Australia Day, and some people in the community viewed them as a very successful event. We moved to move them from that day, and we're really, in a way, looking for a home for the awards that really highlight what the awards are about. And I think marrying those awards with the celebration of National Volunteer Week really makes sense. The recipients of these awards historically have been volunteers within our community, so what better way to highlight what they've done than to hold these awards in National Volunteer Week. It's another way of celebrating our volunteers, and I think this is a very, very sensible suggestion, and I imagine other councillors might feel the same.
You, Councillor Hans.
Yeah, I'll just briefly say that I support certainly having a celebration during National Volunteers Week. We have an amazing amount of volunteers in this community. You know, most of them don't want any recognition at all. But, you know, sometimes I think, you know, we really need to support and celebrate those volunteers because it, you know, there are some amazing people. So I certainly do support a celebration of National Volunteers Week and the awards being held during that time.
Thank you. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillors, I'll now call for a vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried 6-0. Move. Take a quick 5-minute break. We'll resume at 5:15. Thank you, everybody. We'll resume now at 5:17. And we're moving on to item 9.4, 2023-24 Local Sports Infrastructure Fund. The purpose of this item is to consider potential applications to the Victorian Government's 23-24 Local Sports Infrastructure Fund, the LSIF Fund. Officers are recommending that 3 applications are being made. Oh, I've got a call for conflict.
Through you,
Mr.
Mayor.
Sheeran.
Yeah, thank
Sorry.
you. Just to declare a general conflict of interest for this item, as I said at the start of the meeting, I'm a member of the Colac Cricket Club, which is a tenant club of the Lake Oval, which is subject to consideration for a funding application for lighting.
Thank you, Mr. Sheeran. Sorry, I didn't remember. Okay, so I'll go back to the officers are recommending that 3 applications are being made. 1 football soccer facilities feasibility study through the planning stream municipal planning category. Cricket nets upgrade at the Apollo Bay Rec Reserve community facilities stream, and a lighting upgrade at the Lake Colac Oval community sports lighting stream. Do councillors have any questions of officers? Councillor Costin.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just flag, I've got an alternative motion, thank you. But,
Do it. We're going for questions first. Have we got any questions?
Just flagging. And the question is in relation to the proposed application for a soccer feasibility study, and I acknowledge this is a great grant opportunity and we have so many projects that we want to put up. But in this case, we have had a bike facility feasibility study in our pipeline for a couple of years now, and we did allocate money to it, and then it's sort of fallen by the wayside in the last budget. And I'm just wondering, between the progressing that bike feasibility study and progressing a soccer feasibility study through this fund, how or why did we choose the soccer project? Thank you.
Through you, Mayor. So it's really the story of having 2 or actually more worthwhile projects to consider. So in terms of indicating why we nominated soccer as the project, soccer has actually been played in Colac competitively since about 2003, so 20 years. And for 20 years they've had facilities that really haven't been fit for purpose. In 2012, the G21 Regional Soccer Strategy identified the need for a feasibility study to try to future plan for the growth of the sport, acknowledging that it was growing in the Colac Otway area. That's further going to be emphasised in an upcoming refresh, G21 refresh of that strategy. So I think we heard during question time that we have an active soccer club in Colac, the Otway Rovers, 250 juniors participating week in, week out during winter, senior teams as well. We're seeing growth of soccer not just locally but nationally on the back of the Matildas in particular, but it has been growing of its own volition too. So on balance, wasn't an easy or straightforward place to land, but given that the demonstrated ongoing local demand for soccer, that's the reason why we've recommended that over bike facilities.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Finnegan.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Given my day job, I sort of run a business on Murray Street, so I have a number of people who, when they have council issues, rather than calling up, will come and speak to me in my business. And this has been a pretty hot button issue, I've found, particularly from people around the Lake Oval. And one of the questions I've had in particular has been around light pollution with these lights, how we would go with mitigating the impact if we were to submit this application. And it was successful. How would we go about mitigating the issue of light pollution to neighbouring properties?
Through you, Mayor. So there are Australian standards that govern obtrusive light, and so we have already made some preliminary investigations. Those preliminary investigations have found that no properties would be exposed to light exceeding the Australian standards, which is 10. 10, I'm just trying to remember the measure. Lux, yeah, 10 lux. So, and the other thing to note is that old style lights, such as the ones that are at the Lake Oval, tend to be fairly low on the poles, and they send the light fairly horizontally across the ground. The new standard of lights are higher and then more angled, so the lights are directed at the playing surface, and there is very little spill outside. So there is a science to it. And we have done those preliminaries to understand whether there would be any impacts over and above the Australian standards, and there won't be.
Thank you. Any further questions, Councillor Hanson?
Just regarding the lights at Lake Oval, I believe you sent out letters out to nearby residents requesting feedback and the possibilities of making submissions. And those submissions close next week, so after today's decision. So, you know, there has been some feedback that it seems to be a bit backwards. What is your comment to that? So if this officer recommendation gets moved as a motion and approved, does that mean we're moving ahead with the lights? What about if submissions come back overwhelmingly negative and make a lot of sense? Like, it seems to be it's confusing, and that's the feedback I've had and emails I've received. It seems confusing.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. And we can understand it is probably a little bit different to the way council would typically engage for a project like this, and it's really kind of brought on because the funding stream was advertised. It requires that we conduct specific consultation on lighting projects before submitting the application. And the application was fairly short turnaround. So 13th of December, we have to lodge the application. So what we've done is built into the recommendation a point which authorises the CEO to submit applications for endorsed projects, having considered the feedback that is received through this consultation process. So if council chooses to approve the recommendation that's put before you today, it doesn't necessarily mean that we will proceed to a grant application. The step that will happen in between that is that we will conclude the community consultation and bring that information to the CEO to on balance, determine whether it's appropriate to proceed with the grant application.
Thank you. Follow-up question, Councillor Hanson.
Well, council has a council meeting on the 14th of December. Have you sought the 13th? Oh, have you sought like an extension, a one-day extension, so that we actually can follow a process that makes sense to the community?
Through you, Mayor, unfortunately, extensions aren't available under this grant program.
Thank you.
Have you tried?
Through the Mayor, we did an information session with the state government, and it was clear that no extensions will be made, and there are other councils that asked the same question, and the deadline is 5 p.m. on the 13th of December for submitting applications.
Thank you. Councillor Finnegan.
So theoretically, we could have. When's the deadline for submission? Sorry, again.
Through you, Mayor, 5 p.m. Wednesday, 13th of December.
Sorry, I mean, sorry for the consultation. Sorry, I do apologise. Yeah.
November 30?
So November 30.
Correct.
So theoretically, we could have we could potentially have run this after the consultation at a special meeting. Could we not? Or is that, it's a genuine question, like could we have considered this at a special meeting?
We could have called a special meeting.
Was there any thought given to that process?
Not discussed with me, so no, I haven't thought about it.
Thank you. I just wanted to explore that point because I wasn't sure if we were able to. I guess I've got further questions following on, but I do understand that Councillor Potter has had his hand up, so I've got a couple more, so I'd prefer
Councillor
if you
Potter.
want to bring yours up, Councillor Potter.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Finnegan. Look, we do know the importance of umpires, not just in football and any sport. No umpires, no sport. And I know we've been over this before, but if we put in for the lighting and it's not successful, or councillors take a view not to go down that track, looking forward, do we have a plan B to look after umpires? I know, Nicole, you and I have looked at it 100 times probably, but it's an issue for the umpires. I'm just wondering if we can revisit something if this is successful.
Through you, Mayor. As we know, the umpires, for example, are currently training at the Lake Oval. It's non-compliant and substandard lighting. So if this wasn't successful, I guess the issue would be either they would have to continue to train under substandard lighting, with the benefits being that during winter they are the sole tenant at the moment with facilities off-field that are working for their club, or we look for another facility to transfer the umpires to. We know that Central Reserve was one of those facilities talked about, but we also know that we would have to displace another group in order to accommodate the umpires' use. We're already at and frequently beyond the capacity of the current playing surface in terms of use. So to add a user, we would have to displace another user. So it ends up being a bit of a Tetris game. We don't have a perfect answer right now. We would have to work out how that would work with all parties involved.
Councillor Finnegan.
Thank you, Councillor Finnegan. I'm just seeking clarification on the Lake Colac lighting project, Lake Colac Oval lighting project. It seems there are still some open questions. One is there is an ongoing community consultation, which is not closed yet and we haven't considered. Two, and you're nodding your head, so you've answered that question. Yep. And the next one is we haven't yet considered the future costs, the cost of providing that lighting in the future, operational costs and maintenance costs in the future. Is that correct?
The question is, Councillor Costin?
Have we looked at what the future costs will be for the lighting project?
Through you, Mayor, I think there's a few components. I think the first component is that clubs around our shire pay the electricity use. So for council, that part won't change. We do currently have lights there that are at the end of their asset life. They will need they need replacing now. We haven't within this report done a whole of life analysis. So yes, there would be an impact to the long-term financial plan as we depreciate newer facilities. But no, it's not in the report. The other thing to note is that at our other grounds, clubs are also responsible for some of the ongoing maintenance. So that includes things like globe replacement.
Thank you. And a further question: will there be future opportunities future grant opportunities for this project?
Through you, Mayor, that's something that we probably can't say with absolute certainty. We know that LSIF, or Local Sports Infrastructure Fund, is an annual grant program, but the priorities of government change from time to time. We've seen that say, female-friendly facilities that was in last round of funding isn't in this round. So I would say there's no guarantees that there would be a dedicated lighting round. We hope there would be. But we can't, we don't know for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And one last bit, if I could.
One last question.
Clarification. I wasn't quite sure about the response to can we address this at a special meeting before the 14th of December?
CEO, would you like to comment on that?
Sorry if I wasn't clear. I thought the answer was yes.
It can be.
It could be. Council could call an unscheduled meeting to address one item.
Thank you.
Councillor Finnegan.
Thank you very much. I guess a lot of this work and I guess the consideration of the lighting project has been around essentially the need for this facility to be utilised at night, particularly by the Umpires Association. But as stated in the response to the draft fair access policy, there could be consideration that if there are women umpires within the Umpires Association determine that the best facility and the best time for them to do their practice and the like is at Central Reserve, that we would have meetings between the facilities. And I guess the question is, it seems to me that we all are almost putting the cart ahead of the horse here. When could it be a potential solution without having to do the lighting be to move the umpires to Central Reserve where there's appropriate facilities, and then perhaps redirect, rather than applying for this grant, look into funding something like a pavilion upgrade at the Lake Oval so the Otway Rovers could make that their permanent base or their home base.
Through you, Mayor. So there's quite a few moving parts there to try to address. So I think the first thing is, I think you were coming at it from a fair access perspective, acknowledging there are female umpires. That would also depend on the displaced user. Say, if the displaced user was Auskick, we know that there are girls that participate in Auskick. So again, it's that complex game of Tetris. We probably would have to undertake those conversations. The other thing that we would have to understand is whether all of the umpires' needs can be met at the Eastern Reserve, given the current off-field facilities. What reserve did I say? Eastern. There you go, I'm jumping around town. Apologies, Councillor.
Follow-up question?
Yep, and I guess on the basis of the suitability of the ground, the amount of hours that Central Reserve is currently used for, do we know where that's what our level is, where we're currently at, and if, you know, the deterioration of the surface or anything has been at such a point now whereby if we don't get people off it as is it going to completely fall apart and be unusable, or is it just going to be usable regardless, is the question. Because to me it seems the obvious answer here would be to have the umpires move to Central Reserve, negating the need for lighting, which is going to upset neighbours and the like, and then upgrade the pavilion and have the Otway Rovers move in there and utilise that facility as their home base.
I think first to know Otway Rovers train at night and they would need lights to train. So at the moment, the ideal maximum use for the kind of oval that Central Reserve is 25 hours a week. We're fairly frequently clocking 30. And in the past few years, it has become a little bit more challenging to keep that playing surface to the standard that we would like. Does that answer your question?
I guess is the degradation of the playing surface such that it, and in its current state, does it present a danger to players and the like? And if it does, well, why haven't we scaled back the hours before now? Because if it's an issue now and it's going to be an issue if someone else moves there, why didn't we stem the issue when it came forward?
Through you, Mayor. Sorry. I think the challenge is availability of suitable alternative venues. So we've got a positive problem, which is growing demand for our Colac facilities in particular, and Central Reserve is obviously a focal point because of the quality of the facilities. But what we're finding is that there's heavy demand for all of our Colac facilities, and it's about trying to find that balance, and it's not always easy, given then there's on-field needs and then there's off-field needs, and not all facilities, particularly our off-field facilities, meet the needs of all of our user groups. So it's not as easy to transpose them to different grounds sometimes.
Thank you. I think we've got a pretty clear picture of what's in front of us.
Well, I was going to say, since off-field facilities have been brought up, I was just wondering if we could ask a question about some of the tenants in the sort of youth club facility and everything like that, and as to whether or not they're probably the best tenants to have in our Central Reserve, considering there are sporting facilities and sporting clubs that could utilise those rooms. But if we're not going to allow that, that's fine.
I think the motion is really about whether we're going to apply for an upgrade at Lake Oval rather than the broader debate of who should be in.
And I would say that everything's tangentially related in the sense that, you know, the answers to these questions can inform the answers to the overall question. But obviously you are in the chair and you are the mayor and you have the ability to make the call. So
Thank you, Councillor Finnegan. I'll make the call. I think we've got enough information on which to move on. So, councillors, the officers have provided a recommendation with the report for our consideration. Does any councillor wish to move a motion in relation to this matter? Councillor Costin.
Thank you, Mayor. I have an alternate motion, which hopefully will come up on the screen. Could we scroll down, please? I'd like, with the indulgence of councillors, I'd like to add an additional point 7 to this alternate, which defers consideration of the Lake Colac lighting upgrade project to a special meeting to be held on or before the 7th of December.
Mr. Sheeran, did you want to make a comment?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just be concerned about our ability to actually submit or prepare a funding application within less than a week.
Thank you, Mr. Sheeran. If it was before the 1st of December, would that be better?
Through the Mayor, look, even coming today, we've got 2 weeks to, a little bit over 2 weeks to prepare funding applications. It will be a challenge. It's a decision for council, though. It's not for me to debate that.
Councillor Hanson.
I think, so thank you for that comment. The challenge here is, and it's pretty obvious, I think, for everyone in the room, if you're out there for public consultation and it's closing on the 30th of November and we're being told that an application has to be pretty much done by the 1st, what's the point of the community consultation? I think that's what we've exposed here, which has put councillors in a very difficult position.
So through the chair, I think what the officers are trying to explain is that if council indicated tonight that it's a potential application subject to consultation, we would start but not submit. If we don't have the go-ahead to even start until another 10 days or so, and we wouldn't start if there isn't support, that's fine, But if in 10 days, if we start then it's going to be very difficult. So it's not that the consultation would not be important and inform whether an application is lodged or not. That's not what we're saying. It's really important that we go through that process before a decision is made to formally lodge or not. But we would start as soon as we get the go-ahead from councillors that it's a potential application. Okay, and so the motion that Councillor Costin has up there doesn't flag it until without the additional point. So we would only be working on the two. That's all that I think Mr. Surin was trying to explain.
With all due respect, I think you've still got this situation where you're out for community consultation and you're saying unless we give you the go-ahead you can't move forward with it, but you've moved forward with the consultation. I would think that you could move forward with it because you've started the process, you've started the consultation.
Yeah, certainly we want to move forward with the consultation. I'm not talking about that, it's just the developing up of the formal application and filling in that process is all that the officers are looking for, whether they start that work or not. The consultation is really important, and even if council don't endorse it as a potential application tonight, I think it's great that we've actually started a conversation with councillors to inform where to go to next. Consultation with community to inform where to go to next. But councillors can call us an unscheduled meeting through resolution, and so we'll always work to try and deliver what council is asking for.
So back to the motion, Councillor Costin.
A question, if I may. So can officers work concurrently on the lighting project? Given there's a fair chance it will proceed, the council will agree? What about council endorses in principle the Lake Colac lighting project, subject to the outcomes of community consultation?
Well, Councillor, you're putting the motion
That's
and we'll need a second.
effectively what the recommendation of officers was.
If I may, perhaps the wording that Councillor Costin may be looking for is around the first consideration requests that officers continue work on the application, which would be considered at a council meeting to be scheduled before the 6th of December or something of that ilk. That would enable the officers to continue working on the application whilst we're considering, but we are able to make a call on it before the deadline and give enough time once community consultation has ended.
Councillor Costin.
So if we refer back to the wording of the officer recommendation, point 6 was authorises the CEO to submit applications for the endorsed projects to the infrastructure fund, subject to having considered community feedback to the proposed Lake Oval lighting upgrade project. Could we use words to that effect that say consideration at a special meeting before the 6th of December?
Do I have a seconder for that?
Hang on.
Yeah.
Hang on. We need to see
We
that.
need to see it.
Yep.
I think that I'm going to make this point in public. This just again highlights why we should be having pre-meetings earlier than 2 hours before a council meeting instead of wasting essentially the whole morning, because we end up in situations like this. And I know I have green hair and I look like a clown, but I'm not a clown.
Have we got the motion up on
2.7. So
for us to consider?
if we cut and paste point 6 from the officer recommendation and make that, point 6 is already there, is it? Okay. Yep, cut and paste, add it as point 7, yeah. Take out the capitals. No. Authorises the CEO. Subject to to having considered community feedback to the proposed Lake Oval lighting upgrade project at a special meeting before the 6th of December.
It's the 6th. Are we going to be on the 6th, on the day we're here? Yep. You comfortable with that?
Yep.
Yep. So that's the day we're here for a briefing. It'll be a briefing day. Okay. So is that the motion you're wanting to put, Councillor Costin?
Yep.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for this motion?
No, I don't think that's fair for you to ask that, Mayor. I think you should first be asking if there's any questions, because I don't think there's even a shared understanding
That's
of
fine. Any questions?
exactly what the motion says now. So when is this special meeting going to be held, please? That will be the first question. What date? I mean, my reading of the calendar is that Wednesday the 6th. I would have thought that Wednesday the 6th is the date that special meeting would be held.
Instead of before, we can have on the 6th of December.
Thank you. That adds some clarity. But I'm trying to understand where we are now. Is the key difference that the council, as in councillors, will decide on the public comment on the 6th rather than the CEO deciding? Is that the key point of difference in this aspect?
In relation to this point 7, yes.
The other difference is the limited financial contribution to the Apollo Bay project. Is that the key difference?
That's correct.
I'm happy to second it.
Got clarity? Second it. So I've got a seconder. You got further questions? We don't have opposed. Anyone opposing?
Sorry, can we have a time nominated for the calling of the meeting? So we have a date. Can we have a time, please? We have a planning committee at 4 o'clock and we have audit and risk committee in the morning. So it needs to be in between those times. Or after, sorry. Yeah, or after. Yep. Yep.
After the planning meeting?
Okay.
After the planning meeting? Okay.
Yep. So 2023 after the planning meeting, after the planning committee meeting.
We don't know how long the planning meeting will go.
5:30. To be scheduled at 5:30 p.m. on the 6th of December.
Can I ask a question, Mayor? And it's probably a question for governance through you or the CEO.
Go for it, Councillor Hart.
And I'll just say that I think I support what Councillor Costin is trying to do, but I have concerns with the way point 7 is worded. It seems to say that we have endorsed the local sports infrastructure fund for the lighting, but then later on we're going to make a decision on the lighting. And so I don't think that's what Councillor Costin's intent is.
Thank you, Councillor Hart. Perhaps instead of the word submit, we could have to prepare applications. To prepare an application. For the take out endorsed in projects. It's prepare an application for the 2023 sports infrastructure. Yeah, the project specified there. Yeah. Are
Okay.
we there? Are we there? Okay. Let's just move on. Might be a bit clumsy, but let's move on.
Yeah, I seconded how it reads now. Thanks for your indulgence.
Thank you, Councillor Hart. So I've got a mover, I've got a seconder, we've got a motion that we understand. Do we have any opposer? Anyone opposed?
I'm just wondering if Mr. Surin has a comment because he may have spotted something that doesn't read right, just judging by his reaction.
Through you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Finnegan. Just the lighting project's actually not recognised in point 1. So I think if you're going to move that way, it needs to be recognised.
So, sorry, my reading is that council will only recognise it at the special meeting after it's considered the community consultation. If you're going to go with recognising it, then we're back to the recommendation.
But it says
substantially. So it's, I don't know, it's Councillor Costin's motion.
Let's move on. Okay, Councillor Speak.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, everyone, for your time involved in this. I think we need to prepare a little bit better for these, not just myself, but the recommendations as well, so that we know what's coming and what the open questions still are around some of these projects. Basically, this alternate motion brings the Lake Oval Lighting Upgrade project back to Council for decision after we've had the opportunity to hear from community consultation. And community consultation's very important. It would just seem a little bit not aligned with our policy on community engagement to endorse a project for an application before we go through our community engagement process. That's what we committed to our community in our policy. So that being addressed, the next item there to be addressed is the soccer sports facilities feasibility study, which I support, but I do acknowledge that it's the bike facilities feasibility project has been pipped at the post on this, and I hope that we have an opportunity to progress that feasibility study at some time in the near future as well, because it's an equally worthy project. But soccer probably leaps ahead on the back of the Matilda's success in the recent international soccer event. The next one is the Apollo Bay Recreation Reserve cricket nets upgrade. The other projects we had been proposing that council make contributions to this and the clubs make no contribution, but for the small struggling Apollo Bay Cricket Club, we were proposing that they provide, they find $68,000 or so to make their contribution to this grant application, and that doesn't seem fair in my view, so I'm proposing that council at least contribute half of that amount, recognising that we're providing funds for sports facilities, for sports teams. It shouldn't really matter where those facilities are located. We're promoting teams and we've just talked through an equity access policy also. And what we're doing, what the club are trying to do is address some safety issues at the existing cricket nets and also provide a third cricket net so that their women's teams can train at the same time as the men and not be squeezed out by the men during the evening training session, so that women can train at the same time. They have equal access to the facilities. So the club is trying to do the right thing. It's a small, struggling club. It would have to undertake some substantial fundraising measures to raise $68,000, and I think it's only fair and reasonable that council puts in half that amount. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hart.
Thanks, Mayor. In speaking to this, I'll probably draw attention mainly to the changes to the officer recommendation. I think it is a sound argument that if there's going to be contributions for these other projects by council, that's only fair that also occur for the Apollo Bay Cricket Club project, and that is one of the changes compared to the recommendations. I have significant concerns about how we've been asked to effectively endorse the lighting project at the same time as being out for comment, inviting the public to make some comment on that particular project. Whilst I note and appreciate your indulgence, particular Mayor, in trying to draft this in a council meeting, I think what council is trying to do, and I think there's been sufficient discussion if this is adopted, is saying, well, on that project, if you have to do the preparation, and that's only been brought up to us in the question time that, the problem is the preparation for the application. If you have to do the preparation, well, by all means, continue doing that work in terms of the application for the lighting, but that will be a council decision as to whether or not that aspect proceeds, and that will now be on the special meeting of 6th of December at 5:30. And whilst I acknowledge the difficulties in drafting this in the meeting, that issue, that was even an issue, was only teased out in answering questions on that. So I think the intent of this resolution is clear, and I think there's a way to proceed. But I note that I do not want to set a precedent where council starts proceeding with a project while it's out for comment about whether or not the project should proceed. That is not a good precedent.
Like to speak? Councillor Finnegan.
If those who are watching this aren't quite sure what the hell's going on, I'm really not entirely sure at this point either. So based on that and the absolute saga we've just been through, the fact that we've met at some inexplicable reason at 2 o'clock today, despite having 14 items on the agenda, and I'm getting to my point, I'm sorry, Mayor, but this just exemplifies why we should be meeting earlier and working these things out before we end up workshopping an amendment or a different motion on the floor to such an extent like this, when there's significant questions going backwards and forwards, and we haven't really had the opportunity to ask the questions on this basis, considering there were councillors away at last week's briefing. And I think we're in a situation now where we, as a council, look like a joke. Because guess what? I think it is a joke.
Councillor Finnegan.
On this basis, I don't think I can support this motion. I don't want to vote against it, right, because I understand the intent of it, but not having a copy or anything in front of me and looking through it, I just think it's an absolute fallacy that we're put in this situation. And you know what? I've got to go with my heart and say, if I don't understand it, why the heck would I consider voting for it at this point? And that's no blight on Councillor Costin, Councillor Hart, anyone else who's tried to workshop this here, comes back to the point that we as councillors haven't met early enough to consider this. And I am absolutely sick of this situation unfolding, and now it's come to a fore in a public meeting.
Thank you.
For many points. And I'll be voting as present or something of that ilk, because I don't want to vote no, and I don't want to vote yes. So I'll have to take advice from governance on how the hell I'm going to vote on this.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Thanks, Councillor Potter.
Thanks, Mayor. And I understand Councillor Finnegan's frustration sometimes, but we do have to be mindful of Operation Sandon report and pending recommendations out of that. I'm pleased to see this. I'm particularly pleased to see the support for soccer. Soccer's been underdone in this community for years, and that is recognised via a number of strategies and studies that have been done. And we did hear earlier about 200 kids wanting to play or playing soccer, and we badly need proper soccer facilities. I'm saying soccer. I apologise to all the soccer players. It's football. Yes,
thank you, Councillor.
As some of my kids would tell me. So I am pleased that officers have put that up for our consideration, and likewise I'm happy to support the Apollo Bay Cricket Club down there. I've spent quite a lot of hours watching cricket on that ground while the ground isn't ours, it's managed by Gorkapper. This is, as Councillor Costin stated, asset for the community. It's an asset for male and female players, kids in particular, to improve their skills. So happy that council can make a contribution towards that.
Councillor Potter. Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, I will speak. I'd like to start off by saying that we have been very successful under the Local Sports Infrastructure Fund for a number of years now. It has resulted in some fantastic upgrades to facilities around the Shire, and a lot of work has gone in over the years from officers and from councillors and everybody involved, and sporting clubs and everybody involved to achieve that success. And there's certainly has been some, some great results, particularly around lighting over the last few years. There have been, some fantastic upgrades. And this is what this opportunity presents to us today. And like officers said, the funding model sometimes changes. What the flavour of the month is this year might not be something that you get funding for, next year. And so you have to work within the confines of the funding model. And we have heard from officers, they have asked questions around extensions of time, around community consultation, because that has, been a part of applying for the grant this year. But what it has meant, and I think what it actually is positive, is that officers have put up a recommendation. I think their intent was not to rubber stamp these projects, was to run consultation in conjunction with getting the application ready, but not necessarily meaning that it was 100% endorsed, it was going ahead. And I guess from councillors' perspective, we just want to make that clearer to the public. And what you've seen play out in the chamber is really a very transparent way of councillors working through this. The community don't have to worry about us sorting out things behind closed doors. We've worked through it in the chamber today, and it's very transparent for everybody here. We have had feedback from some people in the community that have received letters about, particularly around the lighting upgrade to the Lake Oval. They have some concerns around it, wish to make submissions, have made, we have received some written submissions already, and possibly wish to make verbal submissions. Probably what I also want to highlight is that, and maybe the wording could be better, because really what we're saying in point 7 is that we authorise the Chief Executive to prepare applications for the items above, the soccer facilities, the rec reserve, and that we do authorise the CEO to prepare an application. So for the 2 projects above and the Lake Oval lighting upgrade, we wish to move forward with the proposal, but that does not mean we are endorsing it or rubber stamping it. We want to hear what the community has to say. We want to hear submissions, and then at a later stage we will make a decision around that application. So what I'm saying, CEO, is in point 7. Whether there's some confusion that I don't know whether it does make it clearer or I'm making it more confusing, is that we're authorising the CEO to prepare an application for the projects to the Local Sports Infrastructure Fund, that we no longer, the Lake Oval isn't in the 2 items above.
Yep, so we'll prepare the 2 above.
The 2 above and the...
Prepare the 2 above, and then we'll come back and talk on the 6th.
Okay, so you're not going to move forward with the other one? I think that's the intent. The intent is to keep working on the Lake Oval.
It does say prepare an application.
Yep. Well, we've only got 2 projects, and that's just what I wanted to clear up.
There's only 2 projects endorsed.
Yes, so I would think, if Councillor Costa was okay, that we would have authorised the CEO to prepare an application for the projects above, including the Lake Oval lighting upgrade. Yeah. That would be clearer.
I was going to tell the staff not to start.
Yeah, no, that makes it clearer.
We think including the Lake Colac Oval upgrade. including the Lake Colac oval lighting upgrade.
We'll proceed as if we have 3 endorsed projects, but we won't. As
We're
if
not,
we do,
we're
but
not,
we don't have endorsed.
I think that's what council is saying. We are not endorsing anything. We're not, because we haven't heard submissions yet from the community. That's why we're out at consultation. And I think by the sounds of it, maybe the grant's been too tight, but it's put us in this
situation,
tight time frame.
Thank you.
That's clearer. Now we will be preparing 3 applications because it wasn't my intention.
Thank you.
So can I now put this to the vote?
I'd just request that the full text be displayed on the screen in one thing so we can read it as one continual thing if we zoom out, perhaps. Sorry. Yeah, I'll give it a go. That's all right. I'm going to stand up and do this one, guys.
So am I putting this to the vote? All those in favour?
I'm sorry, I'm not considering the motion. That's why I'm reading it. Because I need to see it as it sits. And I think everyone should. You. Now that I've been able to finally assess the motion in full, I will support it.
So you're ready for me to put it to the vote, Councillor Finnegan?
Yes.
Thank you. I will now put it to the vote. All those in favour? 6-0 carried. And I'm just going to call a 5-minute break. Back in 5 minutes. 6:15. We ready? We're streaming? Thank you. Okay, item 9.5. 765 and 792 Nelligan Road, Coronannon. Use and development of a dwelling. The purpose of this item is to have council make a determination with respect to this planning application. Oh, sorry, conflict of interest.
Yeah. Thanks, Mayor. I need to declare a conflict of interest in this matter. The mother of four of my sisters has lodged an objection to this matter. It's a general conflict of interest. So I've got to step out of the room on this one. Cheers.
Thank you. Right, so back to item 9.5. 765 and 792 Nelligan Road, Cronannon, use and development of a dwelling. And the purpose of this item is to have council make a determination with respect to this planning application. The officer's recommendation is that council determines to issue a notice of decision to refuse a permit for the use and development of the land for a dwelling. Do councillors have any questions? And I'm wondering if we, in the interest of time, because we're really running behind time, if we could limit the questions to new questions, not ones that we've already had answered. Councillor Costin.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just flag that I've got an alternate motion to issue a permit. Thank you. The question I have of officers, if we refuse a permit, how do they see this property increasing its contribution to our agricultural output? What's the vision of what will happen with this property?
Through you, Mayor, this land is in ownership, in a family ownership, and currently used for agriculture. So we'd anticipate its continued use either as it is now or else in association with other land in the area.
Councillor Potter.
Thanks, Mayor. If council refused to grant a permit on this occasion and the applicant had fresh information or circumstances change, or I know the applicant could go to VCAT to overturn the decision, but is there an opportunity for a similar application down the track, or does the only option for the applicant is to take this to VCAT if it's refused?
Through you, Mayor, obviously if it were refused, a future proposal could come in on the land, whether from this applicant or any other landowner. Every application is assessed on its merits, so we always look at the detail of every application. We have numerous applications in the farming zone, and only a handful of those actually come to council. So most applications, are supported adequately or are in locations that we consider appropriate. We always have regard to the policy and whether we can justify it from a policy perspective. So yeah, in summary, if an alternative application came in, we would look at it from scratch on its merits to see whether it could be considered to comply with policy.
Thank you.
Thank you for the answer.
Councillor Hart.
Thanks, Mayor. If an alternative application came in, as was just discussed, would the applicant have to pay planning permit application fees again for this, because it would be a different application? And approximately what would those fees be? Or if you don't want to guess at them, what were the fees for this one, which would at least give some indication as to a fresh application?
Through you, Mayor, when an application was submitted, a request could be made to reduce the fee. Given that, you know, we've already had a look at the site, we actually are governed by the fees we charge by fee regulations that apply statewide and that have a section on what authorisations council have to waive fees or to reduce fees or to provide refunds. So if it was considered that because we'd already looked at the site there was merit in reducing the fee, that there was justification that we could rely on from those regulations, we certainly would consider it. We'd be happy to have a look at that once we knew what the proposal was and what work it would entail. In terms of the fee, if you just bear with me one moment. The fee was just around 1,300, so 1,300, it's slightly over.
Any other questions? No further questions? Councillors, the officers have provided a recommendation with the report for our consideration. Does any councillor wish to move a motion in relation to the matter? Councillor Costin.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move an alternate motion to issue a permit subject to conditions. Thank you. And it should come up on the screen here.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hart. Is it to be opposed? Councillor Hanson. Councillor Costin.
Thank you, Mayor. This is another one along similar lines to proposals on small holdings, proposals for dwellings on small holdings that we've considered before. I think we've considered some 10 since Council called these applications in. 3 have been sold, 1's on the market, 6 of them are proceeding as intended. The applicant's farm management plan proposes a more intensive agricultural use of the land, and it also proposes housing for teachers for the small struggling school out there. Our municipality needs both of these. We need to make more efficient use of our agricultural land, and as we know, we've declared a key worker housing crisis, and teachers are certainly key workers. The 40 hectare minimum acreage rule to allow a dwelling is somewhat outdated and a very blunt planning tool. It doesn't consider the more contemporary, more intensive farming practices, such as the specialist raising of calves to become herd replacements for larger farms. The rural land strategy, our 2007 rural land strategy, doesn't address the legacy of small titles that we have in this area, which were once very productive small farms specialising in cropping. And it penalises the existing owners of those titles because they can't do much with them except graze cattle on them. Given the price of land, it's unlikely that these small holdings will ever be consolidated into a large holding of 40 hectares, let alone the 300, 200, 300 hectares needed for a viable farm these days. Small holdings don't necessarily mean agricultural land is being used inefficiently. More intensive farming practices can produce a greater return per hectare than the larger farms. And officers haven't questioned the farm management plan. The projected net income is somewhat around $2,000 per hectare per year, and this seems at least as much or even higher than larger dairy farms in the area, even if you consider deduct land area for tracks and the house. More intensive farming, such as the raising of herd replacements, requires close supervision, so it requires a house on site. young cattle are prone to misadventure, and you could equate the need for supervision somewhat along the lines of running a childcare centre without an on-site supervisor. It just doesn't work very well and can easily get cattle into trouble. And that's not to mention the need to guard against stock theft or machinery theft. In this case, the applicant also proposes the additional benefit of accommodating teachers. That'll be a great boon for the nearby schools that are struggling to attract and retain teachers. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hart.
I'll reserve. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Hanson.
I'll be voting against this proposal. The officers have assessed the proposal against the planning scheme and have recommended refusal of this application. The proposed use and development of a dwelling does not fit with the purpose and guidelines of the farming zone. There have been 2 objections to this proposal that both raise concerns about the breakup of farming land, and if this proposal is approved, it goes against the planning rules. Both objections raise, a number of other concerns that I, won't go into all of them. The farming community have fought for policies that protect the land in the farming zone. And I guess, some of the reasons around that are that it ensures farmers' right to farm is not eroded by secondary uses, which create land use conflict. That could possibly be, building a house to use, for accommodation of, even like, this proposed accommodation for teachers or other uses. I can't exactly, I think, but mainly for teachers. And also it does, they've also fought for policies that protect the land also so that it does not adversely impact the future growth of farming enterprises through non-agricultural land uses and fragmentation, which also can happen through subdivision, which is not happening here, but that's the kind of things that, have been fought hard for. It was mentioned around the legacy of small titles, where there is a legacy of small titles. There are thousands of small titles. There are lots of small titles. If we had allowed houses on all the small titles, we'd basically have suburbia in the farming zone. So I think it is really important that council does protect, and does support appropriate use in the appropriate zonings, and that's what I don't think that's what this is. So I won't be supporting Councillor Costin's motion.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson. Councillor Potter.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I'll be voting against this motion. I was in a quandary. Normally, I'm pretty strong on the protection of farmland, especially farmland of strategic significance, and farming is under threat. Our food bowl is under threat, and besides the economic damage to this community, should farmland and farm use continue to shrink, it has a wider implication for people out of this shire and across the country. What I did find persuasive, though, was a submission from the principal of the Elvie School highlighting the teacher shortage, the trainee teacher shortage, and of course we know about the lack of childcare workers and early years educators. But I didn't see the nexus between this proposal and that shortage. I didn't understand how this might help address that shortage. So having considered that, I fall back onto what the officers have put before us, and that is that this proposal doesn't fit within the planning scheme, and I won't be supporting it as it is at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor Hart.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. In discussing this matter, I draw councillors' attention to page 110 of the agenda which shows the layout of this particular lot. This isn't a new subdivision, and in fact, if the resolution moved by Councillor Costin is approved, 2 lots will have to be consolidated into one, which will be an incremental improvement in the current situation. These particular lots are surrounded mostly by other lots that either have dwellings or have approved dwellings, and so the capacity of this lot to be absorbed in a larger farm, it might be a nice aspiration, but in practical terms, it's not likely to happen. There was a submission made on this, and I have watched the submission committee. I didn't attend it, I was away at the time, but I have watched it. The point was made that we should be supporting smaller farms as well as larger farms, and some of the smaller farms in the municipality will understandably require off-farm work, in this case a teacher, to make that situation viable. And there's an inherent conflict or contradiction in the information we get from the experts on this. On the one hand, we get told you can't have a house because this small lot is not viable as a farm. But then at the same time, you can't build a house there because the only thing you're allowed to do is a farm. It's an inherent contradiction that on the one hand, even the experts say it's not large enough to farm, it can't be joined to another farm because it is, in a sense, if you look at page 110, almost landlocked and surrounded by houses. That proliferation of houses has already occurred. The blue on the map on page 110 indicates either houses or lots that have approval for dwellings. So that's already occurred. So on the one hand, it's too small to have as a farm, but you can't do anything else with it because it can only be a farm. And here's a proposal that bridges that inherent contradiction, and there are a number of small farms. There's many of them through the Shire where people have off-farm employment to breach that gap. Otherwise, what council is doing is playing with people's livelihoods and situations, almost a reverse Robin Hood policy by this council that says if your property is not big enough to be a farm by itself, then we're going to degrade the value of your property and you'll have to sell it off to some large farm. It's almost some sort of reverse Robin Hood policy. I think what has been proposed gets a best use out of this property in terms of its farming potential, and the thought that suddenly this is a we consolidating a larger farm is not practical when you look at the surrounding lots on page 110. So the people who should be making decisions on the management of the farms should be the landholders, not council, in using these sorts of processes to frustrate the interests of landholders and to effectively create small lots that already exist that under council's terms they can't really do anything with because we won't allow them to build a house.
Thank you. Anyone else that wish to speak? Okay, thank you. Councillors, I'll now call for a vote. All those in... Oh, sorry, Graham, your last closing statement.
That's okay.
I'll get the hang of this soon.
Councillors, I've listened carefully to Councillor Hanson, Councillor Potter, and I've heard words like secondary use, shrinkage of farmland. I don't agree with those words. The raising of herd replacements, they might be dairy herd replacements, is not a secondary use. It's an essential practice that's needed for farming. And in fact, we're not shrinking the amount available for farming here. We're actually going to consolidate 2 lots under this motion to issue a permit under the conditions of this motion. So it actually grows one of these small lots. Farming's moved on a long way since 2007 when the rural land strategy was formulated. 40 hectares was seen as a viable farm at that stage, but we know that's not really a viable farm without off-farm income. And it seems to rely on a concept of broad acre farming when we now know that many of the on-farm practices might be outsourced, such as the rearing of herd replacements. So farming's a little different to what it used to be 15 years ago or 20 years ago. So, councillors, let's apply a bit of common sense to this application. It will make, approving this application will make more efficient use of this piece of agricultural land. It will deliver a greater economic outcome and deliver a social outcome also, because we have one more house in a housing crisis. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, I'll now call for a vote. All those in favour? Those against?
Division. Please.
Division. All those in favour? Councillor Hart, Councillor Costin. Those against? Councillor Potter, Councillor Hanson, Councillor White. Councillor Hanson.
I'll move the recommendation.
I'll
Have a
second
seconder?
it. Yep.
Opposed? Councillor Hanson.
Oh, yeah, I've probably pretty much said everything I want to say. But I will just touch on, I think the farming zone has probably turned out to be one of the, it's probably becoming a really difficult zone, or, even a controversial zone. There's plenty of people around who would like to, through policy, I guess, that's been brought in, around trying to protect farmland for the use of agriculture, for growing food, for growing fibre. Rules have been put in place to protect, I guess, the right to farm and the right for that land to be used for those purposes. And it has, it certainly, has created angst, and, even for this council. And, it is, it is really quite challenging. But I did want to touch on, some of the challenges of that. And one of them, I think Councillor Hart spoke about. It's almost like a reverse Robin Hood when people aren't allowed to build a house on the land that they own. But also, it actually does the opposite. Sometimes council, at different stages, council has approved, this council has approved houses on farming zones, and it has resulted in houses being put on the market, within months of the decision being made, and a windfall gain for the person that has been lucky enough to be granted a permit. But it very much takes that land out of the hands of any young farmer, anybody trying to get into farming, which often these smaller blocks of land are. Your opportunity to get into farming, your opportunity to grow your own herd, to actually get into it. Once a permit for a house is granted on it, it really becomes a hobby farm. It becomes a very expensive property. So the arguments can be had many ways. So it is, it is really difficult, and refusing the permit, is a really difficult decision. But that's the way I'll be voting.
Councillor Potter.
No, I won't speak. Thanks, Mayor.
Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Hart.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. And I don't intend to go over the arguments I discussed, but just for clarity, and I think as much for the public who might be watching this. So the motion is to refuse to grant a permit, and I'll be voting against that motion because I think a permit should be granted. So I just want to make it clear, in voting against the motion to refuse, that is because I think a permit should be granted.
Thank you for the clarification. Councillors, I'll now call for a vote. All those in favour? All those against? Motion carried 3-2. Division. All those in favour? Councillor Hanson, Councillor Potter, Councillor White. Against? Councillor Hart, Councillor Costin. Move on to item 9.6. We have to, Councillor Finnegan. Councillor, we're now looking at item 9.6, appointments to committees and external organisations. The purpose of this item is to appoint councillor representatives to the Council Audit and Risk Committee, the South West Victoria Alliance Board and the G21 Region Alliance Board. Do councillors have any questions of officers? Councillor Hanson.
I'm happy to move the motion when ready.
Any questions? No? Do I have a seconder? Move the motion.
I'll move the motion that we appoint Councillor White and Councillor Arnott, yes, to the Audit and Risk Committee, and that we appoint Councillor White to G21 and Councillor White to the South West Alliance Board.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Costin. Is it to be opposed? Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, just briefly, this motion is to appoint two members to our Audit and Risk Committee. Councillor White has been on Audit and Risk for the last 3 years and will continue, and Councillor Arnott brings a wealth of experience, but he is new to the Audit and Risk Committee. I spent a year on it and due to other commitments have stepped down, so that's part of the reason why that's coming to tonight's council meeting. And with the appointment of Councillor White as the Mayor, then I think it's fitting that the Mayor attends G21 and the South West Alliance, represents council on those boards. And I'd like to take the opportunity to thank Councillor Potter for his year on the G21 board and the South West Alliance board. They're really important positions that really require strong representation for our community.
Thank you. Councillor Costin.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll support this motion. It's largely administrative, I think, although I will say that appointing the Mayor to all three sort of looks like we're all proposing the Mayor takes on all these roles. I would prefer the Mayor wasn't on the Audit and Risk Committee, but with a new member coming on, Councillor Arnott, I think there's a need for continuity there, and therefore it is appropriate to have the Mayor on the Audit and Risk. It is a fairly onerous task on the Audit and Risk Committee, and I hope the Mayor appreciates the workload there and the load, the burden that it will apply. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? No? Okay. Oh, Councillor Finnegan, sorry.
Also, I guess I should start off by echoing the comments of Councillor Hanson, thanking Councillor Potter for his time as our representative on the G21 Region Alliance Board and on the South West Victoria Alliance Board. As has been stated, these are very important roles, and Councillor Hanson prior to Councillor Potter and now Councillor Potter have done a fantastic job and will be well served by the new Mayor, Councillor White, in these roles. Like Councillor Costin, I have reservations about having the Mayor serving as a councillor representative on the Audit and Risk Committee. Normally I wouldn't vote for such a move, but the reality is that there's been a lot of change in that committee. We've got a new council member coming on in Councillor Arnott, and there's some other changes to the structure of the committee, and it's definitely makes sense that we, the one council representative on that committee who can continue as the Mayor is willing to do as such, and I think it makes sense. And it is an onerous task. It's the most labour-intensive, I guess, of the committees we as councillors can undertake. And I thank everyone who has served on that committee previously. I think out of those of us in the room, I think I'm just about the only one. I'm not sure about if Councillor Potter has. Well, I would have done it, but unfortunately I run a business and got to focus on running that sometimes. So, but yeah, so I'll be voting in support.
Thanks, Councillor Finnegan. No one else wishes to speak? No. Councillors, I'll now call for a vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried 6-0. Getting easier. Okay. Item 9.7. Appointment of the independent members to the Audit and Risk Committee. The purpose of this item is to appoint suitably qualified independent members to the Council's Audit and Risk Committee. Do councillors have any questions of officers? No questions. Oh, sorry, Kate, didn't see you. Hand go up.
Oh, well,
Councillor
no, I was
Hanson.
just going to say that we haven't got the names up on the motion.
They're in a confidential.
Yes, but will that be made? Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. Yes, so, okay, thank you for clearing that up.
Other questions? No. Do I have a mover for the motion? Do I have a seconder? Councillor Potter. Is it to be opposed? No one to oppose. Thank you. Councillor Finnegan.
Again, like the previous item, these are positions that need to be filled and need to be filled steadfastly. And, you know, again, Audit and Risk is a very important committee. We appoint a new chair and new members to this as we need to, and the people that have put their hand up for this role are obviously suitably qualified, otherwise we wouldn't be appointing them. So it's just a matter, of course, for council to support this, so that's why I'm supporting it.
Thank you. Councillor Potter?
No, I don't wish to speak, thank you.
Okay. No one else wishes to speak? No. Okay. Councillors, I'll now call for a vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried 6-0. Moving right along. Item 9.8 has been withdrawn from the agenda. Move on to item 9.9, Hopkins Street, Birregurra, unused government road issue. The purpose of this item is for council to consider process to council agricultural licence 0511047 as far as it relates to the Hopkins Street extensions. Do councillors have any questions of officers? Councillor Finnegan.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Just by way of background in relation to this matter, what are the reasons that council is looking to write to DECA for the to have this licence pulled?
Through the Mayor. Initially, residents that have properties that are abutting the unused government road reserve requested that council provide them with rear access to their properties. That was the initial contact and the initial reason.
Follow-up question, Councillor Finnegan.
And my understanding with these sort of grazing leases essentially is that these strips are left open essentially and people can utilise them for access for the properties if their property abuts it. So what was impeding that process in this matter?
Through the Mayor, the unused government road reserve is managed by DECA and they issue grazing licences to abutting landowners. In this instance, there is a grazing licence that's been issued for a long period of time, and the unused government road reserve was being used for grazing purposes pursuant to that licence.
One follow-up question.
Thank you very much. And in relation to this, was there any issues of the person who holds this licence perhaps blocking access to other people or anything of that ilk?
Through the Mayor, that's correct.
Thank you. Any further questions? No further questions? Thank you. Councillors, the officers have provided a recommendation with the report for our consideration. Does any councillor wish to move a motion in relation to the report? Councillor Potter? Do I have a seconder? Councillor Finnegan? Is it to be opposed? No. Councillor Potter?
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, look, Councillor, we're talking about an unused government road reserve which DEEC has the ability to licence, which they have done. The condition of that licence is that there is pedestrian access to be provided to the adjoining landholders. This has been restricted, sometimes prevented. Anecdotally, private property has been interfered with to prevent the adjoining residents accessing the back of their properties in accordance with conditions of the lease. A growing call from those residents to be able to access the rear of their properties as they should have been able to under the conditions of the lease. So I think it's very sensible that councils authorise officers to write to DECA in relation to ceasing the lease.
Councillor Finnegan?
I'm fine.
You're fine. Councillors, I'll now call for a vote. All those in favour? Against? The vote is carried 6-0. Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Okay, moving on to item 9.10. Proposed disposal of surplus council property, Lot 1, 8 to 16, Great Ocean Road, Lavers Hill. The purpose of this item is to seek council approval to disposal of surplus council property at Lavers Hill. Do councillors have any questions of officers? Councillor Hart.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. And just in asking this question, because people know I live at Lavers Hill, this is not adjacent or near my place. This is near the roundabout on the Great Ocean Road, this site. I understand it's zoned township, is that correct? And wouldn't that give the impression that if someone applied to build a house on this lot, that they're likely to get a permit to build a house?
Through you, Mayor. That's correct on both counts.
Could I foreshadow just a little bit of a different alternative when we get there?
Councillor Hart. Any other questions? Councillor Finnegan.
Well, I guess the question's got to be asked then. Is there any reason why anyone couldn't build on this property?
Mr McNeil.
Through you, Mayor, there's a number of issues that would need to be considered in dealing with any planning permit application. One of the biggest ones is due to the size of the allotment is wastewater treatment and retention on the property. And there are other overlay controls that would also need to be met. But it's a challenging site due to the size of the allotment for the purposes of wastewater.
Thank you, Mr McNeil. Any other questions?
Thanks, Mayor. The question, isn't it also the case that this is in declared water catchment and therefore I think it's Water and Water would have some sort of potential input into whether or not a permit could be granted?
That's correct. It's in a declared water catchment and Water and Water are the relevant referral authority, and so they'd be referred the application and would dictate whether a permit would be issued or not.
Any further questions? Councillors, the officers have provided a recommendation with the report for our consideration. Does any councillor wish to move a motion?
Yes, Mayor. And this is not an alternative motion. This is an extra point of the motion. So, and I appreciate I may not have clarified that when I asked for this to be prepared. So I'm just going to get it up on this iPad gadget. So I think that 1.1 should be as per the officer recommendation. I think that the extra point that you just showed below that should become point 2, and then 2 and 3 would be renumbered 3 and 4. Sorry if I hadn't been clear on that before.
Any questions of Councillor Hart on that? Everyone's clear?
Thanks. That's what my intention was. That
that's the motion that you want
the
to
extra bit adds some extra information, if you like.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Potter. Is it to be opposed? Councillor Hart?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I think it is the right decision that's subject to consultation, and I noticed that the last point on this is we're asking for submissions on this, but subject to the outcome of that this is a site that can and should be sold. But I think that it's a very challenging site. It's near the large roundabout where the Great Ocean Road comes in from Apollo Bay, and then you go through a roundabout to Port Campbell direction. Its topography is very steep. It goes down to a small seasonal creek. It's covered, heavily treed at the moment, and as Mr. McNeil has said, it's in declared water catchment and there's wastewater potential issues. Now, my concern with this is if it's sold and then sold again, that someone might have the impression that they could just build a house on it, because it's actually in township zone. And I think, and I know, just while I'm talking about this subject, that both Councillor Potter and Councillor Hanson at different times have looked at this site. I think in these circumstances, we really need to consider offering this to adjoining landholders to buy on the condition that they consolidate it. I think there's a real danger, and we have to be aware, or a risk, and we have to be aware to that if we sell this as a standalone site, someone buys it and then someone sells it to someone else, someone will be saying, I should be allowed to build a house on it, and you could almost get to the stage where council would be spending more money on VCAT fights and reports than we get from selling the site. So whilst point 2 doesn't lock council into negotiating with adjoining landholders, I think that on this occasion that might be the best outcome, provided the adjoining landholders, if one of them buys it, is required to consolidate it, and it may be that makes their site more viable. There's significant issues on this side of the Great Ocean Road because of the water catchment declaration and the requirements for wastewater that's on the north side, if you like, of the Great Ocean Road. So I just think we have to be aware of this and not create a future problem with us by just selling it off and then someone else buys it and gets caught up with these significant planning issues.
Thanks, Councillor Hart. Councillor Potter?
Thanks, Mayor. Endorse what Councillor Hart said. I am quite familiar with this piece of land. It is definitely surplus to council needs. I think many years ago it was a bit of a holding pen for stock, but definitely won't support a dwelling. It's no use to council, and hopefully the adjoining landholder can make some sort of use out of it, should they go down that track and purchase it.
Thanks, Councillor Potter. Does any other councillor wish to speak? Councillors, I'll now call for a vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried 6-0. Thank you. Now we move on to item 9.11, project budget adjustments and cash reserve transfers, November 2023. The purpose of this item is to present the project budget adjustments and cash reserve transfers for council ratification and approval. Do councillors have any questions of officers? Councillor Finnegan.
Thank you, Mayor. And I guess my question relates to, in Table 2 of this, refers to a project called the Barham River Flood Study. And this is the opportunity has arisen for council to undertake a flood study and partnership with the CCMA The external costs funded through a state government grant estimated to be in the order of $140,000 to $150,000. Now, this, we need to essentially, under that arrangement, council would need to cover the costs relating to project management, planning and peer review beyond our current capacity. The question is, would such a study, are we the sole beneficiaries of such a study, or would other bodies like GORCAPA, DECA, the CCMA be beneficiaries of such a study?
Through you, Mayor, there's a broad range of landowners and stakeholders who would be beneficiaries of this piece of work. The Barham River water catchment encompasses a fairly large area that has sort of areas of public owned land, the river itself surrounding foreshore, the camping reserve, the caravan park, but a lot of private land, and council has road assets in Barham River Road. So undertaking a flood study is really important for council as part of its emergency management and a role in sort of stormwater management to identify areas at risk of flooding and then determine planning controls that can be introduced to accurately reflect those areas at risk, and also in terms of emergency management procedures for warning the community and responding in times of flood.
Thank you. Follow-up question, Councillor Finnegan.
Thank you, Mayor. Does the Apollo Bay Recreation Reserve fall within the sort of area that would be impacted by this study, I guess? And who is the body which manages that facility currently?
Through you, Mayor, yeah, the reserve that you've referred to is managed by the Great Ocean Road Coast and Parks Authority. It's one of, as I said, a number of sites that is currently affected by flood-based controls in the planning system, and it would be one of the sites that's assessed as part of that project, should it proceed.
Councillor Costin.
Thank you, Mayor. On the same table, I'm just interested in a bit more information on the LV Recreation Reserve netball court resurfacing. How many courts are we doing? Does it include reshaping as well as resurfacing? And also, I'm a bit puzzled where the 10,000 income comes from. Thank you.
Mr. Sheeran.
Through you, Mayor. Yeah, thanks for the question, Councillor Costin. So it is to resurface one netball court, but also to undertake some additional works around new goalposts. So the court at the moment is lifting around the goalposts, so we need to level those and replace the goalposts. So there's some additional works there. The second part of your question. Oh, sorry, the income, yes.
Where does the income come from?
Yeah, just to clarify, so this project was considered through the annual grants program, Council's grants program. Council allocated $10,000 to the project with a matching contribution from the club. That was based on using a product that we trialled at Western Reserve, and the decision was made to see how that went at the Western Reserve, and if that was applicable to LV, we would look to run with that methodology. Unfortunately, the work that we undertook at Western Reserve didn't meet the users' expectations, so hence we've approached this in a different way. So we'll be applying an acrylic surface to this court.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillors, the officers have provided a recommendation with the report for our consideration. Does any councillor wish to move a motion in relation to this matter? Councillor Potter, do I have a seconder? Councillor Costin? Is it to be opposed? You're opposing the officer recommendation. Councillor Costin. Councillor Potter.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, pleased to see this report, which we get monthly now. Great initiative. I've said that a few times, so it's not a brand new document anymore, but it just shows councillors and the community where some projects are sitting, whether over budget, under budget. where we may need to shuffle money around. The transparency is fantastic, and do appreciate seeing it. The allocation for the Barwon River Road study, I understand there might be some reticence around that because the land now managed by Gorkappa will benefit from that, but you know, we need to demonstrate that we are good neighbours. There's a lot of our assets within the scope of that study. I do recall a few years ago there was a major hotel proposed for up the Barwon River Road. Some people lament that that never went ahead, but one of the major considerations was that was around the issue of flooding and the road being blocked due to floodwaters. So I think this study is valuable, and lots of people will benefit, but particularly Colac Otway Shire. And as I said, if we're demonstrating some good neighbourly overtures to Gorkappa, well, so be it.
Thanks, Councillor Potter. Councillor Costin? You, Councillor Finnegan.
Like Councillor Potter, actually, I think this transfer table is exceptional, and I think that it coming along has been a really good thing for not just for councillors understanding where things come in and go out, but also for the community looking in and seeing where money's been expended, what needs top-ups and everything like that, and we can be very transparent about that. I think that the resurfacing out of the Alvey netball courts is a very, very worthy project, particularly considering it relates to women's sport, and it's something that needs to be done, especially if the courts are reaching the point where they're not really in the greatest of condition, I guess is probably the way to put it without alarming people. And likewise with the Public Health Partnership, the extra expenditure there. But when it comes down to it, I can't support council expending $25,000 in the Barwon River flood study, and it's not because, and Councillor Potter makes the great point that we need to be good neighbours, and absolutely 100%. But what neighbours do when there's an issue with the fence down the middle is you split the costs. And one of the significant neighbours in this matter is Gorkappa, and in my opinion, they should be funding part of the cost. That's why I'm voting against this, and I feel it's a sucky situation I'm voting against this, but I don't want to waste everyone's time in essentially bringing forth amendments and everything like that to what should be a simple process. So rather than that, I'll just vote against it and state that I think that Gorkappa should be ponying up the cheddar as well to get this sorted.
Thank you, Councillor Finnegan. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Costin?
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Finnegan raises a good point here that Gorkappa will benefit substantially from the outcome of this study. But there's two ways to look at this. You can see Gorkappa as just another landholder, and there are many private landholders there as well. Or the other way is that it's a holder of a public asset, and just in the same way that we look at our roads as public assets, we could be looking at the recreation reserve as public assets. So it's a difficult one to justify whether Gorkappa should be putting in or not. I'm sort of wonder what the outcome of this study will be, because I don't see any real solution to the ongoing flooding as climate change progresses and we have more frequent, more severe storms coming down that valley. I'm not sure where we'll go, what the outcomes of the study will recommend. But having made that point, I think because it's a relatively small amount, I lean towards Councillor Potter's view that let's put this $25,000 towards it, and in the hope that it will improve our relations with Gorkappa, and hopefully they will implement some flood protection measures that will benefit the whole community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Costin. Councillors, I'll now call for a vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried 5-1.
Division.
All those in favour? Councillor Hart, Councillor Costin, Councillor Potter, Councillor White, Councillor Hanson. Those against? Councillor Finnegan. We're there. Couple to go. Thank you. We'll move on. Move on to item 9.12, Quarterly Performance Report against 2023-24 Annual Plan, 1st of July to 30th of September. The purpose of this item is to provide an update on the progress made towards Council's 23-24 Annual Plan for the period July 1 to September 30, 2023. Do councillors have any questions of officers? Councillor Finnegan.
Thank you, Mayor. Obviously, just reading through the report, sometimes it can be considered, sometimes you can look at numbers, and when you look through the report table in number 4 for key information, it says the amount of projects we've actually completed is 2 out of 64 for the period, but we've started 51 and haven't started 11. I guess just to sort of tease that out, is it more due to the fact, just the complexity and the number of projects and everything, certain things have a longer lead time to complete, and some things might take 12 months to complete as opposed to a significant amount of time to complete, as opposed to taking a shorter amount of time to complete, if that makes sense?
CEO, would you like to respond?
Thanks, through the chair. Thanks, Councillor Costin. It really is a case of the actions needing to be assessed case by case. Some things, like one of the actions is to prepare a budget bid for next year's consideration, that councils, we would bring that, in February or March, so we're not starting that in July. Yeah. It's not due yet. It might be something that's relatively quick, over a few weeks, and we don't need to start it till Q3. Other things, we would be carrying forward from perhaps a prior year, and from day one they're underway. So it's absolutely horses for courses.
Thank you for teasing that one out, CEO.
Thank you. Any further questions? No further questions? Councillors, the officers have provided a recommendation with the report for our consideration. Does any councillor wish to move a motion in relation to the matter? Councillor Finnegan, do I have a seconder? Councillor Hanson, is it to be opposed? Councillor Finnegan.
Essentially, this is another one of those items whereby the quarterly performance report, it's an update on how we're going, and as the CEO has helpfully pointed out in response to my question, just because the numbers say one thing, it doesn't mean everything's all bad, because there's only 2 things completed, purely because some things take longer than just the reporting period, and making good progress as far as I'm concerned. So that's why I'm supporting this.
Councillor Hanson. Wish to speak? Councillors, I will now call for a vote. All those in favour? 6-0. Vote is carried. Item 9.13, Council and Committee Meeting Dates 2024. The purpose of this item is to set the dates and times and venues for meetings of the Council Planning Committee and Submissions Committee for 2024. Do councillors have any questions of officers? Councillor Costin.
Mayor, I'd just like to flag, I've got an alternate motion. But the question I have is about the practicality of holding a January meeting in Apollo Bay, where which is the best opportunity to capture our non-resident ratepayers. How practical is that?
CEO, would you like to comment on that?
So through the chair, Councillor Costin, I think the practicality of holding a meeting in Apollo Bay would be the same in February, March, April, May, the logistics of it. The practicality of holding a January meeting anywhere is a different matter. So only because it's a period where we have many staff away, and so the preparation of agendas, reports, etc., we tend to try and keep to the smallest demand to address urgent stuff. So that's my response. The January meeting, in and of itself, we try and give councillors and officers a bit of a break. Whether it's in Apollo Bay or in Colac probably doesn't make a lot of difference. It's just extra work in January.
Any other questions?
Thank you, CEO. How do we have any proactive actions to try and provide for the input of non-resident ratepayers into the workings of council through attendance at the council meeting? Do we schedule our Apollo Bay meetings at a time which is during holiday periods, peak holiday periods, or similar, or how do we choose those dates?
So through the chair, I guess one of the things that we've all benefited from in the last few years with the pandemic is that with live streaming of every council meeting, there's a fantastic opportunity for non-resident ratepayers to actually see live all of the council meetings. And I think that hopefully many of them do watch from Ballarat or Bundoora, wherever they are. That would be fine. So that's the best way to get our meetings accessible, I think, for people who aren't where the meeting's held.
Any more questions? Councillor Finnegan.
Given the gap between obviously our scheduled council meetings in December and obviously the council meeting at the end of February, would there be any impetus to perhaps, given the meetings in February are scheduled as with the recommendation here, as having the submissions committee and planning committee meetings on the 14th of February and the council meeting on the 28th, would there be any reason that perhaps we couldn't flip those dates around, if that makes sense?
Who'd like to respond? CEO, would you like to respond to that?
I think you're proposing that the council meeting be held on the 14th and the submissions and planning committee be on the 28th. We're in council's hands. So that could be done. Then you'll have a 6 weeks, potentially a 6 week stretch between being able to address normal council business at a scheduled meeting.
Yep.
What our practice has generally been, as outlined in the report, that rather than schedule a meeting for January as such, we assess what's happening over summer, over Christmas. Are there planning matters that need to be addressed? Are there contracts that need to be issued? And then we've always had the support of the Mayor and councillors to call an unscheduled meeting just to deal with the targeted things. And often that has been either at the very end of January or the first week of February, and then we move into a normal pattern.
And as I remember, because it was my first meeting, was it not we ended up having a meeting in January of this year?
Yeah, I think it was about the 3rd of February or 4th of February or something.
Yep, something like that, and that was the first meeting that I attended. I guess I'm sympathetic to Councillor Costin's position of perhaps having another meeting in the Bay. Could it perhaps be that, would there be any issue of scheduling, say, the end of February meeting in the Bay, for example?
Up to councillors to nominate a location if you wish.
Okay, good. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? No other questions? Councillors, the officers have provided a recommendation with the report. Does any councillor wish to move a motion? Councillor Costin?
I'd like to move an alternate motion, thank you, which is basically just the officer recommendation. But if we look at point 6, if we could, thank you. I think we need to clarify that we will take all reasonable steps to hold at least one ordinary council meeting, not just one meeting, which could infer planning meeting, submissions meeting or whatever. That should be one ordinary council meeting.
Open council
So
meeting.
through the chair, there's no reference to ordinary council meetings in the Local Government Act any longer. That's actually a previous practice, referring to them as ordinary meetings. They are replaced by scheduled meetings.
At least one scheduled meeting.
Manager of Governance has something.
Sorry, and we
thank you.
did, through you, Chair, we did actually leave that deliberately as one meeting because it could include planning committee meetings that had items that were relevant to Apollo Bay and surrounds, and to be able to hold those down.
No, I understand that. That's what I'm trying to prevent.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. So at least one scheduled council meeting. Every 4 months. In 2024, I'm toying with the idea of how to include timing, but I don't see that's easy. I'm happy to leave it as that. Thank you. First to be in February. Okay. With the first meeting to be held in February
At the end of
Apollo
February.
Bay. Thank you. Yes.
That's the motion?
Yes.
Got that clear? Have we got a seconder? Councillor Hart? And is it to be opposed? Councillor Hanson? Councillor Costin?
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I toyed with the idea of including a January meeting in Apollo Bay to capture as many in-person absentee ratepayers or non-resident ratepayers at our meeting, because I think it's important that not just that they look online at our council meetings, but they get the opportunity to meet councillors, shake their hand, stare them in the eye, whatever they want to do. But I accept that council officers need a break over that period, but I don't accept that councillors need a break over that period. In fact, that's one of the busiest times for myself. Everyone wants to have a chat when they come down for the summer holidays. And so I'm happy to just add that clarity that we're scheduling, at least that we're proposing one scheduled council meeting, not a planning meeting, not a submissions meeting, but at least one scheduled council meeting every 4 months in 2024 in Apollo Bay. And I think it's good to have one during the summer period when people are still coming down and still taking extended breaks. And it gives some clarity around for non-resident property owners to aim for a period to come and meet their local councillors. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hart.
Thanks, Mayor. Essentially, this resolution is the officer recommendation with a couple of minor changes, but important changes. One is a greater frequency of meetings in Apollo Bay, and it used to be that we had more than just 2 meetings outside of Colac, and I think scheduling the first meeting, the 28th of February in Apollo Bay, whilst it might not catch as many people as it would in January, it's still summer or the end of summer, and it's likely to have more people there compared to if we go down to Apollo Bay in the middle of winter. I just think it's about being open and transparent and allowing people to engage with council in person at a council meeting or see that process in person. Yes, watching it on YouTube, as I did this morning for the submissions meeting, is an improvement on what we used to have, but there's nothing quite like of being there in the gallery when all the excitement happens. And so I'll be supporting this resolution.
Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, and I'll just flag if this fails, I have a motion to move. I won't be supporting this motion. I actually support having meetings down at Apollo Bay. I support the approach we've taken, which is to be fairly flexible and to schedule meetings that have items on the agenda that are relevant to the Bay. I also support, I think what we've also tried to do is, I think, avoid fire season as well for travelling through the bush, which has been pretty fairly important to some councillors. And so I think we've struck the right balance with 2 meetings down at the Bay during the year. I'll also note it's a huge logistical task setting up meetings at the Bay. And with that, goes a large cost as well in officer time, resources to set up down there. So I support it. I think it's worthwhile, but I think 2 is adequate and works well. So I won't be supporting 3.
Any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Finnegan.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I'm speaking in support of Councillor Costin's motion here. I firmly believe that the reality is the democratic process is for the people and for people to engage. It's all good and well to say that people can sort of call in, or, look at our meetings online, wherever they are in live stream. But, for example, you may, let's just use this as an example, you may live at Colac in the Toowong Shire, but you may own property in the Colac Otway Shire, be that down Apollo Bay, and you may want to interact with your local councillors and be there to ask questions in person rather than asking them in writing, and get the response on the day and get some FaceTime with your councillors. And I think this is a good opportunity. But I also believe that in this interconnected age, that really we shouldn't be seeking to essentially hold ourselves down to just having most of our meetings in Colac. My personal view is we should be looking to hold them around the Shire, whether that be at Birregurra, whether that be at Cressy, whether that be at Apollo Bay, whether that be at Forest, a number of places. And I think this motion goes towards that sort of spirit, and that's why I'm speaking in support of it.
Again, anyone else like to speak? Councillor Potter.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, look, I'm not sure what I'll do with this. I was open to 3 Apollo Bay meetings a year. However, that does preclude, I think, having a meeting at another location, such as Forest, Cressy or Jellybrand that we've spoken about in the past. I do think the first meeting of the year should be in Colac. And as Councillor Hanson points out, February is still well within the fire danger period, which often goes through till the end of March. So I'll think on it, Mayor, as to where I sit, but I'm leaning against it at the moment.
Councillor Costin.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, the issue about fire danger period is something that some councillors might be concerned about, but it doesn't seem they're concerned about my travel up to Colac or any ratepayers travel up to Colac who wants to sit here and ask questions. So be fair. I mean, it goes both ways. And also be fair in the recognition that 1/3 of our rate revenue comes from along the coast. And we should be giving all our ratepayers equal opportunity to meet in glad hand or whatever, our councillors. I think councillors need to get out more. Going to Apollo Bay means we go through forest, or we can go through Jellybrand, Lavis Hill, Beach Forest, whatever. Stop at the shop, talk to people, get out and talk to people, rather than just sit around Colac and focus on Colac issues. I think it gives us a broader perspective, and this proposal does provide that perspective. And that's not to say that some councillors aren't already doing that, and I recognise that, but others, you know, they are not as familiar as perhaps they should be with some of our smaller, more remote towns. So I urge you to acknowledge that you're councillors for the whole Shire, and we should take positive steps, proactive steps to make sure that we do meet up with our ratepayers and residents outside of Colac. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Costin. Councillors, I will now call for a vote. Councillor Costin's motion. All those in favour? Those against? Three all. Casting vote. Can I have a little advice on how that works again, please? I was in this situation before. The motion's defeated. Division. All those in favour? Councillor Costin, Councillor Hart, Councillor Finnegan. Those against? Councillor Potter, Hanson, White, and the Chair. Motion's defeated. And we've got another motion before us.
Yeah, I'll move the officer recommendation, which is up on the screen.
Have a seconder? Councillor Finnegan? Do I have a seconder for the officers? So, Councillor Hanson, you're moving the officer's motion. Do I have a seconder?
I'll move the motion, and I'll put in the change that one scheduled meeting every 6 months, so there's no confusion. It's what we call an ordinary council meeting, but if we can put in that one scheduled meeting every 6 months, so there's no confusion. Every 6 months. Yeah, we've used to have March in Apollo Bay.
So you put that in the motion, March in Apollo Bay?
Yep.
I wish I could read. Right, so you'll move that motion as is up on the screen. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Potter. Is it to be opposed? We have an amendment.
Through the chair, can I make a point?
Yep.
Please. Sorry, I just want to make a point about the point 5 in the motion. Can we go to that? Please. Okay. I just want to make sure councillors understand the way we have worded that is that you're not restricted to only 1 or 2 in Apollo Bay or Colac. The Colac is the default, and then as advertised, we can arrange a meeting elsewhere. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear. I wasn't sure if people missed it.
Thank you for the clarification. Do we have an amendment? Okay, won't we hear the amendment?
Well,
Questions first? Okay, any questions? Councillor Hart.
Yeah, my question relates to the wording of point 6. I think what Councillor Hanson is trying to do is say the first meeting that's in Apollo Bay will be the March meeting, and that's the scheduled meeting. My concern, the way it reads, it could be the first meeting in March, which is a planning meeting, is in Apollo Bay.
Okay.
So
I see what you mean. Yep.
So I think what's trying to say that the scheduled meeting in March will be the first one in Apollo Bay. So
Thanks for the
perhaps we could just be
clarification,
clear on
Councillor
that.
Hart. That's helpful. Have got that, Councillor Hanson? Okay. So we have a seconder for that motion as it stands now? Yep. But we have an amendment. Do we do that first? Yeah, need a... Yeah, so I've got a mover and a seconder. Now I accept an amendment, which will have to have a mover and a seconder.
Yep. So the amendment I'd like to move to that is in recognition of the fact that, as Councillor Costin has pointed out, we have a wide and varied and diverse ratepayer base in the Shire, and my amendment would be that we one of the meetings in any 12-month period should be conducted in the northern part of the Shire, at either somewhere like Cressy or, yeah.
Do I have a seconder for that amendment?
Considering there's a large ratepayer base.
Can I just speak to that?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Potter.
We just heard from the CEO who said this allows for consideration to have meetings elsewhere if we choose to do so.
And I would say my amendment ensures that at least one of the meetings is in the northern part of the Shire every 12 months in recognition of the ratepayer base out there too.
Can I ask a question of the CEO? We've now got capabilities to live stream. If we have a meeting anywhere else, obviously there would be people would expect it to be live streamed. So wherever we went, we would have to find live streaming capabilities.
I check with the Manager of Governance. I don't think we're obliged to. It is our practice, and we would aspire to live stream meetings. But if Council resolves to have a meeting in a location, or not resolve, sorry, if Council decides and we advertise that a meeting will be held in a location where we can't live stream, then we're not going to, we're just going to have to run it without live streaming. We're not going to fund infrastructure to live stream a one-off meeting.
So I have an amendment. Do I have a seconder for the amendment? I don't have a seconder.
That's all right.
So we go back to the motion.
Yep.
So I've got a mover and a seconder for the motion.
Is it be opposed? No.
Is it to be opposed?
I'm not.
Yep.
Councillor Hanson?
Yeah, moving this because I think actually our council meetings have worked well in the last few years. I'm committed to council meetings down at Apollo Bay and the flexibility around them. We've shifted them around, depending on if there's something on the agenda that, might be well suited to hold in Apollo Bay. We have moved that around, which I think has worked very well. In the past, we have had council meetings in other locations. In all honesty, they have not been well attended. I think we're getting more, more visibility to council meetings by live stream because it has certainly opened it up. But you know, I can think of one council meeting held in a town outside Colac and Apollo Bay that had one person turn up, or maybe two, and one of them was a staff member. Yeah, so they have not been well attended, but that's not to say they won't be well attended in the future, and that we should, you know, completely rule it out. You know, I think it actually works quite well, so that's why I will be supporting it.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. Anyone else wish to speak? Okay, I'll put it to the vote. Councillors, I'll now call the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried 6-0. Thank you. Moving on. 9.15, I mean. Councillor Hart, are you with us? Right. Audit and Risk Committee, unconfirmed minutes, 13th of September 2023. The purpose of this item is to present the Colac Otway Shire.
Hang on, what about 1914?
Apologies, it's turning into a long night. So I'm back to 19.14. Instrument of Appointment and Authorisation, Alex Broomfield, and Instrument of Appointment of Authorisation Revocation, Heidi Robinson. The purpose of the item is for Council's Instrument of Authorisation under the Planning and Environment Act, which have arisen through change of staff. Do councillors have any questions of officers? No. Councillor Finnegan.
I'd just like to say I'm prepared to move the officer recommendation.
So no questions. Okay, so we've got a recommendation. Does a councillor wish to move a motion in relation to this recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Finnegan. Do I have a second to Councillor Hanson? Does anyone wish to speak? Councillor Hanson? No. Do you wish to speak, Councillor Finnegan? Thank you. Councillors, I will now call for a vote. All those in favour? Against? The vote is carried 6-0. Try and skip. Now we move on to item 9.15, Audit and Risk Committee, unconfirmed minutes, 13th of September 2023. The purpose of this item is to present the Colac Otway Shire Audit and Risk Committee unconfirmed minutes dated 13th of September 2023. Do councillors have any questions? Councillor Finnegan.
Just stating I'm prepared to move that we accept the minutes.
So anyone else, no questions? So the council officers have a recommendation with the report for our consideration. Does any councillor wish to move a motion in relation to this matter? Councillor Finnegan. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hanson. Does anyone wish to speak? Councillor Hanson. Councillor Finnegan. Anyone else wish to speak? Okay, councillors, I will call for a vote. All those in favour? Those against? Carried 6-0. Item 9.16, Report of Informal Meeting of Councillors. Report of Informal Meeting of Councillors. Please note that the purpose of this item is to report the informal meetings of councillors and does not require a council decision. Thank you, councillors. I appreciate your patience with me. It's been a long night and we've covered a lot of ground. Thank you for your input and respectful participation. That concludes the council meeting, Colac Otway Shire.